Chapter 1460. With a calm expression, Heavenly Secrets bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice, "Master, a few years ago, the Protoss, which race and a few other primordial races approached me and asked me to deduce the whereabouts of the primordial taboo." Su Zimo frowned slightly when he heard that. To think that Heavenly Secrets was the old storyteller's disciple. Heavenly Secrets, Xuanji. In that case, the two of them should be fellow disciples. Heavenly Secrets continued. I was worried that the taboo would grow and wreak havoc in Tianhuang mainland. Therefore, I agreed to help and deduce its whereabouts. However, I was stopped by Junior Brother Xuanji. Junior Brother Xuanji is on good terms with Araki Takashi, and the primordial taboo is Araki Takashi's spirit beast. I can understand why Junior Brother Xuanji wanted to stop me. However, Enigma Palace cares about all living beings in the world and cannot prioritize personal matters. Therefore, I reported this matter to the palace lord and the elders for them to make a decision. When he heard that, Lin Xuanji could not help but scoff and mock. The primordial races were the ones who wreaked havoc in Tianhuang mainland back then. Why are you still working with them and not killing them? Junior brother, I know that you're resentful. However, you can't blame me for imprisoning you. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently with a calm expression. At that moment, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe coughed gently. At that time, I discussed with the elders and agreed that the threat of the taboo was indeed greater. Therefore, we got Heavenly Secrets to join forces with the primordial races to get rid of the Ho temporarily. Since Lin Xuanji insisted on opposing, we imprisoned him temporarily. We made Heavenly Secrets the young master and made contact with the primordial races for this matter. The establishment of a young master was in accordance with the rules of the palace and was only decided after a discussion between the elders of the palace. Yes, the old storyteller nodded expressionlessly. Very good. Seems like there's no problem. Pausing for a moment, the old storyteller shifted his gaze to Heavenly Secrets and asked indifferently, "However, what's up with the blood refinement fiend sutra that you're cultivating?" Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, gazes landed on Heavenly Secrets. Quite a few cultivators revealed looks of shock. Just now, they didn't take Su Zimo's words seriously. But now, the storyteller had spoken about this matter, so it was impossible for him to be wrong. The young lord of Enigma Palace actually cultivated the blood refinement fiend sutra. Even half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng, and the others frowned as they looked at Tianji in disbelief. Among the crowd, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shinjiu did not have much of a reaction. Instead, a trace of panic flashed through the depths of their eyes. "Tianji, did you really cultivate that demonic technique?" Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe asked. Heavenly Secrets' expression remained unchanged. He had long expected that he wouldn't be able to hide anything from the old storyteller. Tianji said frankly, "I have indeed cultivated the blood refinement fiend mantra. However, I believe that there is nothing special about this mantra. Araki Takashi has also cultivated this demonic mantra. He still founded the Wu Dao and imparted martial arts to the masses." Not bad. The old storyteller nodded. A demonic technique is indeed nothing much. The key lies in the person who cultivates it. Araki Takashi once saved countless humans in Myriad Phenomenon City when he cultivated it. Why did you cultivate it? Master, I didn't use it to do anything that offends the heavens. Against the old storyteller's questioning, Tianji displayed his strong mental fortitude and remained calm without any hint of panic as he defended himself in a deep voice. You have something to do with Qin Pianran's death, right? The old storyteller asked indifferently. At the mention of this, the hatred fiend qi around Yan Beichen deepened, and his eyes shone with endless killing intent. Master, you're wise. I have a personal relationship with Dao Lord Immortal Sword. It wasn't appropriate for me to reject his request for help, Tianji said. Furthermore, I merely divined Qin Pianran's whereabouts. Right from the beginning, I did not attack Qin Pianran. Neither did I know that Dao Lord Immortal Sword would kill Qin Pianran. Of course you knew, the old storyteller said. Furthermore, You knew in your heart that Yen Beichen would definitely turn into a fiend once Qin Pianran is dead, and become the fiend emperor hatred of this generation. Right from the beginning, your target was not Qin Pianran, but Yen Beichen. You wanted the true Shura to be born and become your first saber. Yen Beichen was stunned and his expression changed. From time to time, he would frown and his facial features would contort as though he was enduring immense pain. So, right from the beginning, he had been someone else's pawn. Pianran's death was entirely because of him. His fate was not in his control at all. Tianji remained silent. The old storyteller continued. The so-called worry of the taboo wreaking havoc in Tianhuang mainland is merely an excuse. That's because the taboo will become your second saber. There's only a single motive for capturing Night Spirit without killing him. That is to lure out the third saber, Araki Takashi. The fourth saber is the major sects and factions of the cultivation world. The fifth saber is the primordial races. The old storyteller said slowly. As for you, Tianji, you are the saber bearer behind the scenes. What you have to do is to gather the 5 sabers in Heaven and Earth Valley, and kill wantonly. At that time, Heaven and Earth Valley will be filled with corpses and rivers of blood. No matter which saber is broken, it won't affect you at all. That's because you're already the biggest winner, and Heaven and Earth Valley will become the best place for you to cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. When these words were spoken, it was simply earth-shattering. The cultivators were shocked and dumbfounded. Even demoness Ji Mingzhen, Lin Xuanji and the others widened their eyes in shock. Although they had heard of the battle in Heaven and Earth Valley, they did not know that there was a saber-bearer behind the scenes who was manipulating everyone's fate. Even Araki Takashi was his pawn. Suzumo sighed internally. Initially, he had the same speculation as well. However, there were many things that he was unclear about. Now that the old storyteller had explained it so clearly, he finally understood the ins and outs of the entire matter. One had to admit that the mysteries of heaven were indeed terrifying. If not for monk Daming, Suzumo would have become a pawn abandoned and sacrificed by Tianji. How extravagant! The old storyteller nodded and lamented as well. Although the old storyteller explained everything, Tianji was still smiling indifferently. There was no hint of panic in his eyes, and he was terrifyingly calm. Tianji smiled gently. Master, you're wrong. I didn't refine a single drop of Heaven and Earth Valley's bloodline. That's right. The old storyteller shook his head at the mention of this with a lamenting expression. Man proposes, God disposes. You schemed, but you didn't expect that you would become the 6th saber in someone else's hands. That statement was like a sharp thorn that pierced Tianji's chest. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had never made such a huge mistake before. The smile on Tianji's face gradually disappeared. It was only at this moment that a hint of anger and indignance flashed through Tianji's eyes. However, it vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1461. Suddenly Heavenly Secrets smiled. Master, at the end of the day, everything is just your conjecture. You can't punish me because of some conjectures, right? Very good, as expected of my disciple. The storyteller old man nodded with a mocking expression. Suzumo frowned slightly as well. Heavenly Secrets was right. Although what the storyteller old man said was the truth, it was only his conjecture after all. It was indeed impossible to convince everyone if he wanted to punish Heavenly Secrets because of some conjectures in front of everyone. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. I didn't kill anyone in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. My hands are clean. Although Tianji had been defeated, it was not to the extent of being utterly defeated. As he said, even though he had set up such a huge scheme and schemed against everyone, his hands were not stained with a single drop of blood. Master, I have nothing to say if you want to punish me. However, I'm indignant if it's just your conjecture. Heavenly Secrets bowed deeply to the storyteller old man, and did not say anything else. Heavenly Secrets did not hurt anyone. If he's punished, the cultivators of the sect will probably be disappointed when they see it. That's right. Joining forces with the primordial races can't be blamed on Heavenly Secrets. It's also the result of a discussion between some of us elders. Elder Gantian and Elder Shinjio stood out to plead for Heavenly Secrets. Suzumo sighed internally. This was indeed a difficult problem for the storyteller old man. After all, the two of them were master and disciple. The storyteller old man might not be able to bear to punish him based on his conjecture. The storyteller old man looked into the distance and remained silent for a long time before saying slowly, "Of course I won't punish you." Heavenly Secrets smirked, as though he had expected this outcome. He knew his master too well. The reason why he dared to do such a thing was because he had predicted everything. He had even schemed against the storyteller old man. Pausing for a moment, the storyteller old man changed the topic. "However, I've told you guys before that as disciples of Enigma Palace, don't get involved in the fights of the cultivation world easily. If you get into trouble, deal with it yourselves. I won't help you. I won't forget your teachings, Master." Heavenly Secret replied in a deep voice with a respectful expression. "Since you've caused trouble today, go deal with it yourself. No one from the Enigma Palace is allowed to interfere," the old storyteller said calmly. Su Zimo was shocked. Although the old storyteller was mindful of their master-disciple relationship, he did not show favoritism. Instead, he gave Heavenly Secrets a chance. Of course, this was also an opportunity for Yen Beichen. "Shura, what do you think?" the old storyteller asked. "Thank you, Senior." Yen Beichen's voice was cold, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. Heavenly Secret was extremely calm and said in a solemn voice, "Master, this disciple seeks a fair chance. In a one-on-one battle, life and death are not to be discussed. No one is allowed to interfere." Tianji's words were a reminder to Su Zimo and the others that they could not help. "Don't worry. If you can survive Shura's sword, I won't punish you. But if you are in danger, I won't save you," the old storyteller said. "This battle will end all enmity. There is no victor, only life and death." "All right." Heavenly Secrets smiled gently and agreed without any fear in his eyes. As though he thought of something, Su Zimo frowned slightly and hesitated. However, on second thought, even if he said it, given Yen Beichen's character, he would not care. After all, he had waited for this moment for way too long. Although Su Zimo had a worried expression, he retreated with Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji. Everyone from Enigma Palace retreated as well. In the blink of an eye, a large empty space was revealed in midair. Yen Beichen and Heavenly Secrets stood opposite each other. "Shura, I know that Qin Pianran's death pained you greatly and you can't let it go." Heavenly Secrets said, "Right now every single day of your life is torture. You can't wait to end your own life, so that you can reunite with Qin Pianran, right?" A sinister glint shone in Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Even his tone turned gentle, causing one to trust him from the bottom of their hearts, and let down their guard. Yen Beichen frowned and lowered his head slightly, as though he was reminded of the past, and was in pain and self-reproach. What a profound bewitchment technique! Demoness Ji frowned slightly and murmured softly. She was the most familiar with such techniques. However, she did not expect that Heavenly Secrets' attainments in bewitchment techniques were not weaker than hers. The Xiantian record was all-encompassing. As the disciple of the old storyteller, Heavenly Secrets possessed shocking talent, and was even more knowledgeable. Nobody knew how strong Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was because he rarely attacked. Up till this point of his cultivation, Heavenly Secrets did not have to do anything personally if he wanted to do anything. All he had to do was set up a little, and everything would be resolved naturally. Both parties looked like they were standing opposite each other motionlessly. However, Heavenly Secrets had already made his move. "Since you're in so much pain, why don't I send you on your way?" Heavenly Secrets continued to bewitch Yen Beichen and said gently, "Give up, I'm helping you. As long as you're dead, you'll be able to reunite with Qin Pianran. Qin Pianran is waiting for you down there anxiously. Can't you feel it?" Yen Beichen's body trembled even more violently, and his features were contorted. "What should we do? Shura can't hold on much longer." Demoness Ji had a worried expression. If he can't break free from Heavenly Secrets' bewitchment, Shura will probably commit suicide on the spot even without Heavenly Secrets' help. "He won't." Su Zimo shook his head slowly. "Brother Yen cultivates the Hatred Sutra, and the hatred in his heart transcends everything. If Heavenly Secrets wants to bewitch Brother Yen with his bewitchment technique, He's underestimating the Hatred Sutra and Brother Yen. Right then, Yen Beichen's body gradually stopped trembling and calmed down. What's wrong? Have you decided? Heavenly Secrets walked towards Yen Beichen slowly and asked gently. Suddenly, Yen Beichen raised his head. His eyes were pitch black like two black holes that could devour everything. Heavenly Secrets was alarmed when he caught sight of those eyes. Indeed, I'm in pain and I've let Pian Ran down as well, Yen Beichen said slowly. However, even if I commit suicide, I have to kill you first. If not for you, Pian Ran wouldn't have died. Heavenly Secrets, you deserve to die. Buzz. Before his sentence was finished, Yen Beichen swung the Hatred Fiend's saber in his hands and slashed viciously towards Heavenly Secrets through the void. That slash not only contained the endless hatred of the Hatred Sutra, it also contained the torrential killing intent of the Shura Sutra. The saber intents of the two fiend techniques fused into one with that slash. This was the strongest slash that Yen Beichen had released ever since he started cultivating. Even Su Zimo, who was watching from afar, felt his scalp tingle when he saw the burst of that slash, and was secretly speechless. The Hatred Fiend saber streaked through the air. A black beam descended above Heavenly Secrets' head with hatred and killing intent, as though it wanted to destroy everything. Chapter 1462. That slash was so terrifying that even Su Zimo might not be able to defend against it. Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile with a grim expression. He had not expected that his bewitchment would force out the most terrifying Shura. Slapping his storage bag with his left hand, Heavenly Secrets took out a protection talisman and tore it apart instantly, forming a defensive barrier around him. At the same time, he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Mystic Heaven Dermic Robe. Mystic Heaven Mirror. Suddenly, a robe with dermic powers appeared on Heavenly Secrets' body and shone with a mysterious luster. An ancient mirror appeared in his right hand as well and blocked the descending black beam in midair. In the blink of an eye, Heavenly Secrets released 3 defensive methods. Snap! The Mystic Heaven Mirror was the first to shatter. Normally speaking, the Mystic Heaven Mirror could reflect attacks. However, the power of Yen Beichen's slash was way too terrifying. The saber intent of the two fiend techniques, the Hatred Sutra and Shura Sutra, was something that even the Mystic Heaven Mirror could not defend against and shattered instantly. Immediately after, it was the defensive barrier formed by the protection talisman. The main body of the Hatred Fiend saber did not even hit the barrier. The black beam that burst forth merely sliced the barrier into 2. Boom! Thereafter, the black beam struck the Mystic Heaven Dermic Robe heavily with a deafening sound. The Mystic Heaven Dermic powers shattered, and the main body of the Hatred Fiend saber was revealed. However, that slash did not slice Heavenly Secrets into 2. Instead, it met with an immense resistance. Bang! Heavenly Secrets fell heavily to the ground. However, he struggled to stand up quickly, covered in dust. His face was pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The clothes in front of Heavenly Secrets' chest had already been sliced apart by the Hatred Fiend saber, revealing his inner armor. It was a defensive Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon that was extremely precious. Previously, Heavenly Secrets suffered a loss in Heaven and Earth Valley. After returning, he wore the inner armor, and it could be considered as saving his life today. In order to defend against Shura's slash, Heavenly Secrets had to release 4 defensive methods to defend against it. Crack, crack, crack. Right then, a shuddering sound came from the inner armor. Heavenly Secrets lowered his head. A crack appeared on the inner armor and split it into 2. The glow of the inner armor dimmed rapidly. Voila! This inner armor had fallen off from Tianji's body and was completely destroyed. The crowd was in an uproar. That single slash crippled a Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon. Good. Heavenly Secrets nodded slowly. It's no wonder why it's the weapon of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. To think that it would still be this sharp after being sealed away for so many years. However, Shura, can you still release such a blade intent? Tianji sneered. This kind of attack that fused 2 types of saber intents was not inferior to Su Zimo's instantaneous eruption of tens of thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi. It consumed a lot of one's essence spirit. It was impossible for him to release a second strike in such a short period of time. Tianji had long seen through Yan Beichen's facade. He smiled and said, "Shura, you won't be able to hold on much longer. This saber strike has exhausted everything you have." When Yan Beichen arrived in front of Enigma Palace, he was trapped in the exquisite killing formation and nearly lost his life. When he came out, he was already covered in wounds. However, he did not recuperate at all and fought against Tianji with his injured body. At this point of the battle, his injuries were even more severe, and he was holding on with his immense willpower and hatred. Of course, Tianji was in a terrible state as well. Yan Beichen pursed his lips tightly and continued charging over without saying a word. His footsteps were already staggering. However, his gaze was fixed on Tianji the entire time without shifting at all. Tianji wielded his folding fan. The two of them fought once more. Blood splattered everywhere as their figures intersected. Yan Beichen fought without any regard for his life. He wanted to slay Tianji, even if he was severely injured. His fighting style caused Tianji to be restrained. His folding fan smashed towards Yan Beichen's head. However, Yan Beichen did not even look or defend. Instead, he slashed in reverse towards Tianji's glabella. In less than 10 breaths, Yan Beichen gained the upper hand once more. However, the two of them had expended too much stamina, dermic powers and blood chi up until this point of the battle, and there was not much left. This battle was no longer purely about technique and strength. Instead, it was a battle of mentality and willpower. No one knew who the final victor would be until the very last moment. The two figures intersected once more. Heavenly Secrets' folding fan shattered Yan Beichen's arm. Yan Beichen's hatred fiend saber left a gigantic wound on Tianji's chest that was dripping with blood. Tianji's expression had turned extremely ugly. The wound caused by the hatred fiend saber was extremely difficult to heal. Furthermore, it contained the hatred fiend chi that was destroying his body continuously. If this continued, there was a high chance that he would fall first. Yan Beichen used the hatred fiend saber as a crutch with his right hand and limped towards Tianji. His other arm hung limply by his side, the bones of which had been shattered. There was no longer any dermic powers in his body. It was impossible for him to repair that shattered arm. Even so, the hatred and killing intent in Yan Beichen's eyes did not change at all right from the beginning. That gaze caused Tianji to feel flustered. Tianji could not hold it in any longer. This was also his final trump card, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Before the battle, he had specially requested the old storyteller to have a fair battle without allowing anyone to interfere. When he made that request, he was already prepared to release the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Even if he channeled that fiend technique, no one could interfere. Although there were not many people who truly died in front of Enigma Palace, as long as he refined these bloodlines, it would be enough for him to recover to his peak condition within a short period of time. "Shura, it's over." Tianji looked at Shura, who was walking over with a mocking expression. He channeled a mental cultivation technique, and a strange sanguine glint shone in his eyes as he said slowly, "Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Not good." Su Zima was alarmed. He had the same worry before the battle. He knew the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra the best. If Tianji could recover rapidly by releasing the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, there would be no suspense in this battle. When he saw that, the old storyteller suddenly sighed and shook his head. His eyes filled with disappointment. Yan Beichen did not seem to have heard what Tianji said. Or rather, he did not care at all. No matter what cultivation technique Tianji released, there was only a single obsession in his heart: to kill Tianji. Yan Beichen continued forward and arrived before Tianji before long. Raising the hatred fiend saber, he slashed forward. The slash was soft and powerless without any saber technique, let alone saber intent. Yan Beichen's arm was already at its limit to be able to raise the hatred fiend saber and slash down. However, at that moment, Tianji's expression changed starkly, as though he was frozen on the spot with widened eyes, as though he had seen a ghost. Poof! Under countless gazes, the hatred fiend saber slashed at Tianji's head. The blade pierced his bones and almost split his head into two. That slash even tore through Tianji's consciousness. Naturally, his essence spirit was not spared either. What was going on? Tianji was dead? The cultivators present were not the only ones. Even Su Zimo was dumbfounded and confused as he watched everything in disbelief. Chapter 1463. Yan Beichen was stunned as well. Even he had not expected that his slash would be able to kill Heavenly Secrets. The Hatred Fiend saber tore through Heavenly Secrets' consciousness, and the Hatred Fiend chi on the saber had already rushed in. Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit would not be able to hold out for long before it was devoured by the Hatred Fiend chi. How could this be? Heavenly Secrets' face was covered in blood as he widened his eyes in shock and anger, muttering repeatedly, "How could this be?" Heis! The storyteller old man sighed with sorrow and disappointment in his eyes. "Master, how could this be? How could I have lost?" Heavenly Secrets turned his head slightly and looked at the storyteller old man in disbelief. Heavenly Secrets, if you did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in this battle, you would have had some conscience. The moment you released that fiend technique, you had already lost. The storyteller old man sighed once more with a lamenting expression. This time round, you've lost completely and utterly. This time? Heavenly Secrets asked, and his eyes widened in anger, as though he had thought of something. Su Zimo frowned slightly in deep thought as well. Right at this moment the old storyteller added, "Someone came here and refined the bloodline here in advance." Su Zimo was shocked. Instantly Su Zimo was enlightened. Monk Daming. Earlier on, Monk Daming had been here. However, no one noticed him when the group of cultivators were fighting in front of Enigma Palace. Monk Daming had secretly refined and absorbed all the bloodlines scattered here. That was the reason why Heavenly Secrets was stunned when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. That was because all the bloodlines here had been refined, and there was no reaction when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Heavenly Secrets' blood chi was depleted, and he was exhausted to begin with. Coupled with the sudden change, his reaction was slightly slower, and his head was cleaved apart by Yan Beichen. The storyteller old man knew about this long ago. Therefore, he already knew the outcome when he saw Heavenly Secrets use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The fact that the storyteller old man did not capture Monk Daming meant that he had already retreated before the storyteller old man arrived. Throughout the entire process, no one noticed him at all. If the old storyteller hadn't pointed it out, even Su Zimo wouldn't have noticed it. All of a sudden, Su Zimo thought of something. Back on 6-Star Mountain, Monk Daming had once told him that Enigma Palace might be able to resolve the kill order on him. Su Zimo was a little wary of Monk Daming. At that time, when Monk Daming said those words, Su Zimo had a feeling that Monk Daming had other motives. Later on, Monk Daming said that Yan Beichen was going to Enigma Palace to seek revenge from Heavenly Secrets. Su Zimo did not think too much about it, and headed straight for Enigma Palace. Who would have thought that he would still end up as a pawn in Monk Daming's hands? Most importantly, even if Su Zimo knew that Monk Daming was making use of him, he would still have to come to Enigma Palace. Whether it was for Lin Xuanji or Yan Beichen, he had no choice but to come to Enigma Palace. However, the moment he arrived at Enigma Palace, he would be made use of by Monk Daming. That method was countless times more brilliant than Heavenly Secrets'. However, Su Zimo was still puzzled. If Monk Daming was only here to refine the bloodline, was there a need for him to take the risk and come to Enigma Palace to refine it? This time round, a Mahayana patriarch was alarmed. Furthermore, there was a high chance that an emperor like the old storyteller had descended. Once Monk Daming's tracks were exposed, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Furthermore, there were not many cultivators who truly died in this battle. Most of them were severely injured and did not have much bloodline left. Monk Daming was that cautious. Could he have set up such a trap just to refine that bit of bloodline? It's him. Right then, Heavenly Secrets suddenly roared hysterically. Blood was still flowing from Heavenly Secrets' face. When he heard that, his features contorted and his expression was menacing and extremely terrifying. Su Zimo sighed internally as he looked at Heavenly Secrets. As the old storyteller's disciple, Heavenly Secrets could be said to be meticulous and meticulous. However, It was a pity that by chance Su Zimo and the others had released Monk Daming in this lifetime. In the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, Heavenly Secrets was greatly injured because of Monk Daming. This time round, Heavenly Secrets was defeated again. With this defeat, Heavenly Secrets lost his life. Come out! Heavenly Secrets looked around and roared loudly. He had completely lost his mind. Come out, I want to see who you are. At this moment, Heavenly Secrets looked pitiful and sad. Monk Daming did not appear, and Heavenly Secrets had already lost. He had lost twice. He had lost completely and miserably. Most importantly, from the beginning to the end, Heavenly Secrets did not know who he had lost to. In fact, he did not even know if the person who schemed against him twice was a man or a woman, what sect he was from, or what he looked like. How huge of a blow was that for someone who thought that he was extremely smart and had everything under control. He left a long time ago. The old storyteller shook his head and sighed. He's gone. Tianji grinned as blood continued to drip from his cheeks. He mumbled to himself for a while before suddenly laughing maniacally, with a mournful look on his face. Fufu ha 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 ha. Heavenly Secrets' gaze landed on Su Zimo and the others as he laughed sinisterly. Pawns, they're all pawns. Even though he's so strong, he's still someone else's pawn. You all of you. Heavenly Secrets pointed at Su Zimo, Yen Beichen, and even the old storyteller and grinned. None of you can escape. Your fates are already predestined. Ha 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 ha. Exclamation point. Yen Beichen could not take it anymore. After resting for a while and recovering his strength, he slashed once more and split Heavenly Secrets' head into two. Heavenly Secrets' laughter stopped abruptly. Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit was also shattered by the hatred fiend saber, and was destroyed on the spot. Thud. Heavenly Secrets' corpse fell heavily into a pool of blood. However, Heavenly Secrets' laughter just now still lingered in everyone's ears, and did not dissipate for a long time, sending chills down their spines. The old storyteller closed his eyes, as though he could not bear it. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his disciple after all. He was filled with guilt and self-blame for his outcome today. Lin Xuanji was no longer as cheeky as before, and had a grim expression. He could not help but recall the scenes of him pestering Heavenly Secrets to play with him when he was young. At that time, he was carefree and happy. No matter what he played, Heavenly Secrets could defeat him easily. Even in terms of cultivation realm, Heavenly Secrets was far superior to him, and had entered the conjoint body realm long ago. The old storyteller had a total of 4 disciples, and Heavenly Secrets was the most outstanding in every aspect. To think that he would die in front of Enigma Palace today. Pian Ran, did you see that? After killing Heavenly Secrets, the anger in Yen Beichen's heart dissipated instantly. He knelt down and looked into the skies, saying in a daze, I've killed all the enemies who killed you. I didn't let a single one of them off. Pian Ran, don't worry. I'll accompany you very soon. Very soon. With that said, Yen Beichen could no longer hold on and fell to the ground with a thud, unconscious. Yen Beichen was already exhausted and covered in injuries. The reason why he could hold on until now was entirely because of Heavenly Secrets. Now that Heavenly Secrets was killed, he could no longer hold on and fainted as well. Chapter 1464. Brother Yen. Worried, Su Zimo arrived beside Yen Beichen in a flash, and took out a few elixirs from his storage bag before stuffing them into Yen Beichen's mouth. The old storyteller tapped gently with his fingertip, and a divine light entered Yen Beichen's body. Yen Beichen's injuries stabilized rapidly. He's fine, merely severely injured. Now that he has taken revenge, his tense mental state has relaxed, and he fainted for a moment. The old storyteller said, given his bloodline, he only needs to rest for a few days to recover. As the successor of the Fiend Emperor Hatred, unless he commits suicide, it'll be difficult for him to die even if he wants to. His injuries are not external, they're internal. The old storyteller said meaningfully. Su Zimo understood. Yen Beichen's true injury was in his heart. To begin with, he was filled with guilt and self-reproach, and lived in pain every day. The only thing that kept him alive was revenge. Now that he had taken revenge, and Yen Beichen no longer had that obsession, there was a high chance that he would commit suicide like the fiend Emperor Hatred. In a while, bring him to Enigma Palace and stay for a few days, the old storyteller said. When he wakes up, you can persuade him as well. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo thanked him hurriedly. Today, Yen Beichen barged into Enigma Palace, and even killed a half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace. However, the old storyteller did not blame him. Instead, he took Yen Beichen in. That magnanimity was something that the other cultivators of Enigma Palace could not compare to. Frowning, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe took a step forward, as though he wanted to say something. Patriarch Qing Chung glared at him, and shook his head slightly. Startled, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe retreated hurriedly. Su Zimo helped Yen Beichen up, and handed him over to Ming Zhen before coming before the old storyteller. Bowing deeply, he said, I was rude today and barged into Enigma Palace, and fought with the cultivators of Enigma Palace. Please forgive me, Senior. It's nothing. There's a reason for this. It's not your fault. The storyteller did not blame him at all. Instead, he smiled and said, Moreover, compared to the battle in Heaven and Earth Valley, you've already restrained yourself. In fact, there weren't many people who had truly fallen since the start of the battle. Even though some of the Arcanum Palace half-martial ancestors had been heavily injured by the Arcanum Breaker Bow, their fleshly bodies had been destroyed, and their primal souls had managed to escape. If Su Zimo wanted to kill their primordial spirits, it would be a piece of cake. Although the old storyteller was not present, he seemed to have seen through everything. He knew in his heart that if Su Zimo had truly gone on a killing spree, rivers of blood would have flowed in front of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo handed over the Dharma dispersing bow again. This is a treasure of Enigma Palace. Since today's matter is resolved, I'll return it to its owner. The old storyteller glanced at it indifferently. Since you were the one who snatched this bow, you can keep it. Su Zimo was stunned. The Dharma dispersing bow was one of the ancient unique treasures with terrifying might. Just now it was revealed. In his hands, its might was even more shocking. Yet the old storyteller gave him such a precious treasure so casually. How can that do? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe finally could not help but say, that Dharma dispersing bow is an ancient unique treasure, and one of the treasures of Enigma Palace. How can you give it to an outsider so casually? You still have the cheek to say that? The old storyteller sneered. Since you can't even protect the Dharma dispersing bow and let it be snatched away, it proves that it's useless in your hands. You might as well give it to someone else. Even if it's given to someone else, it can't be Araki Takeshi. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's face flushed red as he argued. Araki Takeshi has just killed a conjoint body mighty figure of our palace, and severely injured several half-martial ancestor experts. If the Dharma dispersing bow is given to him, won't the cultivators of the palace be bitterly disappointed? Bitterly disappointed? The old storyteller sneered again. What's more bitterly disappointed than the palace lord being incompetent and unable to differentiate right from wrong? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe shuddered. The old storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, and the others as he said coldly, You guys are really promising. The outcome of your discussion is to join forces with the primordial races and ask a tiger for its skin. The primordial taboo is the reason why you guys join forces with the primordial races? You've truly forgotten your ancestors. Damn it. The old storyteller's tone was extremely stern, as his gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. Qing Zhe is incompetent and can't differentiate right from wrong. From today onwards, he'll be stripped of his position as the palace lord and reflect on his mistakes. Without my orders, he's not allowed to come out of seclusion. The crowd was in an uproar. Nobody expected that half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe would be stripped of his position as the palace lord of Enigma Palace because of this battle. This punishment could be said to be extremely harsh. Isn't this punishment a little too much? Patriarch Qing Chung frowned slightly and whispered, How can we blame fellow Taoist Qing Zhe for this? Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian stood out and looked at the old storyteller, saying in a deep voice, Although you're the storyteller of this generation of Enigma Palace, and have a transcendent status, you can't be this unreasonable, right? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Judging from the tone of half-martial ancestor Qian Tian, it seemed like the identity of the storyteller was not simple. Half-martial ancestor Shinju nodded as well. For today's matter, we had no choice but to fight when Araki Takashi and the others barged into Enigma Palace to demand for their daughter. No matter what, Araki Takashi and the others were the ones who were rude first. Fufu, the old storyteller sneered. I've been roaming the mortal world and haven't returned to the palace for a long time. I have to thank Araki Takashi this time round. If not for their mess, I wouldn't have known that Enigma Palace would have fallen to such a state. Right now, Enigma Palace is truly filled with all sorts of people. All sorts of monsters have appeared for this battle. There was a hint of cold killing intent in the old storyteller's tone. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao felt a little guilty. Their gazes flickered for a moment before they stopped arguing and remained silent. Also, the old storyteller's expression was cold, and he no longer had the playful attitude he had just now as he said slowly. That lass is the successor of ancestral master Linglong. Even I wouldn't hurt her. Yet you guys tried to kill her? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng, and the others lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Indeed, they were in the wrong for this matter. Demoness Ji had obtained Fairy Linglong's inheritance, and her status was even more noble than the palace master of Enigma Palace. No one from Enigma Palace could hurt her. Their attack was equivalent to disrespecting ancestral master Linglong. Demoness Ji had been suppressing her anger the entire time. Now that she heard the old storyteller's words, the anger in her heart dissipated, and she could not help but laugh. Bowing to the old storyteller, she said, "Senior, thank you for standing up for Yaoyan." "It's fine." The old storyteller waved it off. "Senior, I'm fine. Let's forget about today's matter." Demoness Ji did not want to incur the wrath of most experts of Enigma Palace because of this matter. "It's fine." The old storyteller shook his head. "Today's matter isn't over yet." The old storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao as he asked coldly, "When did you guys learn the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra?" Chapter 1465. Half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao and half-martial ancestor Qian Tian were shocked. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng, and the others were also shocked as they turned to look at Qian Tian and Shen Jiao in disbelief. Qian Tian and Shen Jiao had terrible expressions. In front of the storyteller, the two of them did not even have the courage to lie. "Indeed, we cultivated this fiend technique. However, that's nothing much, right?" Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian forced a laugh and explained, "Enigma Palace is located in the rivers of Hainan and does not belong to any immortal, Buddhist or fiend sections. There is no lack of cultivation techniques of the fiend sects in our sect. The other fiend techniques are nothing much, but don't you guys know what sort of cultivation technique the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is?" The storyteller's gaze was sharp as he said coldly, "Don't you guys know how great of a disaster that fiend caused in Tianhuang mainland 40,000 years ago? Once you're tainted by this fiend technique, you'll sink into it. Given your temperaments, can you control it?" Under the pressure of the storyteller, half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao and half-martial ancestor Qian Tian broke out in cold sweat and did not dare to make a sound. "Speak. Who imparted this fiend technique to you guys?" The storyteller asked slowly. "It's heavenly secrets. It's heavenly secrets." Half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao could not take it and was the first to speak. "We've already lived for more than 15,000 years and are about to enter our later years. However, we're still unable to enter the Mahayana realm. It was heavenly secrets who took the initiative to look for us and said that there was a cultivation technique that could help us enter the Mahayana realm. We only cultivated it because we wanted to become Mahayana patriarchs and strengthen our sect." No wonder. A look of realization flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. For the past 2 years, Qian Tian and Shen Jiao would fully support any decision that Heavenly Secrets made. Even when they joined forces with the primordial races to imprison Lin Xuanji, Qian Tian and Shen Jiao were the first to stand on Heavenly Secrets' side. However, Although the two of them had found the source of the fiend technique, they would never know how Heavenly Secrets learned it. The storyteller closed his eyes for a long time before opening them slowly. He looked at Qian Tian and Shen Jiao and said deeply, "You guys have already committed a grave sin by cultivating this fiend technique. Since you've been in the Enigma Palace for so many years, I can spare you this time. However, everything you've learned in your lifetime, you'll have to return to the Enigma Palace. From today onwards, you'll be mortals. Don't cultivate anymore." Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao were greatly shocked. To be immortal, the old storyteller's intention was to cripple their cultivation. The two of them lowered their heads slightly as a strange bloody light flashed in the depths of their eyes. Suddenly, a huge mist of blood burst out from half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao's bodies as they fled in two different directions. The speed of this blood-red light was simply too fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already 1,000 miles away. This was the blood escape technique from the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Patriarch Qingqing frowned and reached out to grab half-martial ancestor Qian Tian. Whoosh! His palm brushed past the bloody light. The old ancestor's attack was actually still slower by a fraction. Half-martial ancestor burned his bloodline and unleashed the blood escape art. His speed was indeed terrifying. By the time old ancestor Qing Cheng reacted, the two of them had already fled to the horizon. Ha 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 ha! The laughter of half-martial ancestor Qian Tian sounded. Old storyteller, we've been in Enigma Palace for many years and have worked hard even if we didn't contribute anything. To think that you're going to cripple our cultivation with just a few words. After the two of us escape today, the world will be vast. Old dog, you'll regret it sooner or later. The day we become patriarchs will be the day we make a comeback. Ha 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 ha. The two of them laughed wantonly. The old storyteller was expressionless and motionless. All of a sudden, the old storyteller reached out with both palms and pulled in the direction that the two of them were escaping. It felt as though he was trying to pull the two half-martial ancestors back from 1,000 miles away. A strange force spread across the place. There was no commotion that reverberated through the world. However, under the gazes of the crowd, the two figures that were about to disappear into the horizon gradually became clearer. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao were still releasing blood escape, and their speed did not decrease at all. However, the distance between the two of them and the old storyteller was shrinking continuously. They were clearly in the opposite direction, but the more they fled, the closer they were to the old storyteller. Psst! The crowd sucked in a cold breath. That method had already exceeded everyone's understanding. Is that a divine power? Su Zimo murmured softly. Before long, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao were pulled back by the old storyteller from 1,000 miles away. Under the old storyteller's gaze, the two half-martial ancestors were terrified and continued to flee with all their might. However, no matter how hard they tried, they only got closer and closer to the old storyteller and returned to Enigma Palace before long. This time round, the two of them were truly frightened. Please, please, please spare our lives. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Shen Jiao knelt down with pale faces and spoke incoherently. Previously, I could have spared your lives. The old storyteller shook his head slowly. But not now. The moment he said that, the old storyteller did not give the two half-martial ancestors a chance to argue. He extended his palm and slashed in front of the two of them. The heads of the two half-martial ancestors seemed to have been sliced into two by some divine weapon. Blood spewed out, and their essence spirits were destroyed on the spot. Two half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace were dead. All the cultivators in the world fell silent. Half-martial ancestor experts were almost peak existences in the cultivation world. However, in the hands of the old storyteller, they were killed casually like two ants. Every single cultivator of Enigma Palace looked at the old storyteller with reverence. Su Zimo sighed internally. The old storyteller was hesitant when dealing with Heavenly Secrets. In the end, he even gave Heavenly Secrets a chance. that gave everyone the illusion that the old storyteller was more benevolent. However, in reality, the reason why the old storyteller was hesitant was because Heavenly Secrets was his disciple. How could he sever their master-disciple relationship within a short period of time? However, later on, the old storyteller fully displayed his decisiveness to kill. With just a few words, he crippled the palace lord of Enigma Palace. He killed 2 half-martial ancestors with a thunderous might, without the slightest bit of hesitation or sloppiness. This attack completely intimidated the entire Enigma Palace. Bury the 2 of them. The old storyteller waved his hand and turned to look at Su Zimo and the others. Today, it's all thanks to you guys that Enigma Palace can eliminate a huge threat. Senior, you're being too serious, Su Zimo said hurriedly. If there's nothing else, why don't you rest in Enigma Palace for a few days? The old storyteller said, that's good. Let me show you guys around. Alright, thank you, Senior. Su Zimo cupped his fists slightly. Yen Beichen was unconscious and could recuperate in Enigma Palace for a few days. At the same time, he could find an opportunity to ask about the Blood Vine race's killing order. Chapter 1466. Let's go. Follow me into the palace. The old storyteller nodded slightly to Su Zimo and the others and said, now that this matter is settled, I'll take my leave first. Patriarch Qing Qing bowed slightly to the old storyteller and said respectfully, yes, you can go back. The old storyteller waved it off. Patriarch Qing Qing raised his head and glanced at Su Zimo casually. Then he turned around and swiped his palm across the void, causing a huge crack to appear in the void. Patriarch Qing Qing leaped into the crack and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the crack gradually healed and returned to normal. Tearing through the void casually is the power of the Mahayana realm. The old storyteller explained. If one can enter the Mahayana realm and become a patriarch, they can tear through the void at any time and traverse 5,000 kilometers. Su Zimo nodded, still recalling the gaze that Patriarch Qing Qing gave him before he left. That gaze was filled with hostility. Because of Su Zimo, half-martial ancestor Qing Zai's position as the palace lord was abolished. Even Patriarch Qing Qing was berated by the old storyteller and lost face. Although he did not say anything, he must be resentful. Su Zimo glanced at the old storyteller again. He had met this old man back in the capital of Great Zhou. However, who would have thought that this old man who played around in the mortal world would have such a powerful identity and status? Even Mahayana patriarchs had to bow down and obey his orders. Senior, are you an emperor? Su Zimo could not suppress his curiosity and could not help but ask. The old storyteller smiled. Yes. That simple word caused Su Zimo and the others to feel their hearts skip a beat. Although they had a premonition, it was a different feeling when the old storyteller admitted it. The legendary emperor was standing right beside them. Demonis G blinked and asked, then what's your title, Senior? Generally speaking, emperors had specific titles. For example, the Human Emperor, Saber Emperor, Thunder Emperor and so on. My title is Xian, Yifutian said. The old storyteller said indifferently, profound sovereign. Su Zimo thought for a moment and asked, then what does the so-called storyteller mean? Storytellers are a special existence in the Enigma Palace. They're not bound by any of the Enigma Palace's rules. The old storyteller said, this existence can be traced back to the ancient era. Ancestral Master Linglong's disciples were the first storytellers. In every generation, there is only one storyteller. The responsibility of a storyteller is to wander the mortal world and tell stories everywhere. Su Zimo had seen the storyteller's storytelling process before, and it was indeed very good. Most of the stories were about supernatural beings and legends. Su Zimo had once listened to a short part of it, and it was indeed very fascinating. What the old storyteller said was as if it had really happened. When he spoke of it, it was as if he had been there and immersed in it. However, this storyteller's position in the Enigma Palace was so noble and special. His responsibility was actually to play the world and tell stories everywhere. It was truly a little absurd. Why would the Enigma Palace establish such an existence? Demonis G asked in confusion. Do you guys know the reason why Fairy Ling Long established the Enigma Palace? The old storyteller asked instead of answering. Su Zimo and the others shook their heads. The old storyteller said, "The ancient sages once had a saying of the three immortals. The first was to establish virtue, the second was to establish merit, and the third was to establish one's word. It's known as immortality." Merit in words? Su Zimo murmured softly in deep thought. The old storyteller continued. The reason why the Enigma Palace was established was to establish one's word. The so-called word is to record history, extend merit, pass down civilization, and inherit the great Tao. There are many things that, as time passes and people grow old, they will gradually be forgotten by others. However, the Enigma Palace will not forget. Instead, it will record these things and pass them down. I've traveled the mortal world for tens of thousands of years, and talked about the dark and tragic days of the human race in the primordial era. I talked about the ancient war and the biographies of the emperors. All of these things happened in reality and were recorded in the Enigma Palace. This is the civilization of the human race. Su Zimo and the others were dumbfounded and shocked. Su Zimo had not expected that the story of the old storyteller's travels was not made up. It was something that had happened in the past. More than that, he had not thought that the reason why the Enigma Palace was established was not to pass down Tao techniques and secret skills, but to pass down the civilization and soul of the entire human race. That was the reason why Fairy Ling Long established the Enigma Palace. The old storyteller stopped in his tracks and gazed into the distance, lamenting, "The world changes and there's no race that will prosper forever." Ancestral Master Ling Long had long predicted that the fortune of the human race would decline one day as well. Perhaps, the human race will encounter a calamity and experience hardships. However, as long as the Enigma Palace exists, the civilization of the human race will be passed down forever. As long as the civilization is not destroyed, the human race will rise again one day. One day, the human race will welcome a glorious era like the ancient era, where multiple emperors rose. When they heard that, be it Su Zimo, Demonis Ji and Ming Zhen, all of them looked in the direction of the Enigma Palace with deep respect. Instantly, everyone felt as though they were reversing the river of time, and saw the peerless woman, who stood on this land in the ancient era. Although Fairy Ling Long was not conferred the title of emperor, she was worthy of praise. A moment later, Demonis Ji asked again, "Senior, doesn't that mean that many things about Tianhuang mainland are recorded in the Enigma Palace?" "That's right," the old storyteller nodded with a smile. "Senior, what are the biographies of the emperors that you were talking about just now?" The old storyteller smiled. "Enigma Palace will create a biography for anyone who is conferred the title of emperor, and leave behind a biography that belongs to them." "Wow!" Demonis Ji exclaimed and said enviously. "That's truly something that will go down in history and be passed down through the ages." That was a great honor. In the cultivation world, the legends of emperors were extremely widespread, and most of them were because of Enigma Palace. At that point, the old storyteller suddenly turned around and looked at Su Zimo with deep anticipation in his eyes. "Araki Takashi, Enigma Palace has already decided to create a biography for you alone." Ah, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he asked instinctively, "Didn't they say that only emperors are qualified to create their own biographies?" "The reason why they're creating a biography for you has nothing to do with being an emperor. It's because you're Araki Takashi, and you created the Wu Dao to impart martial arts to all living beings," the old storyteller said. "Even the ancient emperors did not create such merit. That alone is worth creating a biography for you alone to be passed down through the ages." Throughout history, Su Zimo was the only one who created a biography for himself without being an emperor. The old storyteller continued, "I didn't write the name of the biography. That's because I don't know what your future accomplishments will be. Perhaps, even becoming an emperor isn't your end. I hope that I'll be fortunate enough to finish writing this biography in this lifetime. If I can't, I'll have to rely on the storyteller of my next life." With that said, the old storyteller glanced at Lin Xuanji beside him. Chapter 1467. Everyone looked at Lin Xuanji. According to the old storyteller, there was a high chance that Lin Xuanji would be the successor of the next generation's storyteller. Old man, you're in such good health. There's no hurry to explain these things, Lin Xuanji pouted. I'm still young and can't shoulder such a huge responsibility. The old storyteller said, fortune and misfortune are unpredictable. Although I can divine everything, I can't divine how long I can live. It's better to say some things in advance. Old man, don't say any more. It's inauspicious. Lin Xuanji frowned again. Although he joked around with the old storyteller and scolded him impolitely, in his heart, the old storyteller was his kin. The old storyteller smiled with a reminiscing expression. I've taken in 4 disciples in this lifetime, and arranged you guys according to the heaven, earth, black and yellow rankings. Heavenly Secrets is your eldest senior brother. Among the 4 of you, Heavenly Secrets is the most talented and cultivated the fastest. Be it in terms of combat strength or wisdom, he far surpasses you guys. Lin Xuanji nodded. Indeed, senior brother is better than me. The 4 of you have different personalities. Heavenly Secrets is calm and mature. Earth Secrets is a little old-fashioned and doesn't know how to adapt. Yellow Secrets is honest and pure. As for you, the old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji and paused for a moment. Your personality is the most similar to mine, unrestrained and frivolous. Normally speaking, Heavenly Secrets should be the most suitable to inherit the storyteller. Unfortunately, I was careless and Heavenly Secrets was led astray. Now that he's at this point, there's no turning back. At the mention of Heavenly Secrets, the old storyteller's eyes revealed a hint of sorrow. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his eldest disciple, and far surpassed Lin Xuanji, and the other 2 in terms of wisdom, personality, talent and combat strength. The old storyteller had high hopes for Heavenly Secrets as well. To think that Heavenly Secrets would plot against the experts of the world in order to cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, causing rivers of blood to flow in the battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. Senior, traces of the primordial races have been appearing frequently in Tianhuang mainland all these years, and all the races are restless. The cultivation world should be prepared. Su Zimo couldn't help but ask. The old storyteller did not answer. He glanced sideways and asked, you must be very disappointed with the major sects and forces of the cultivation world, right? Su Zimo didn't say anything, but it was a tacit agreement. Over the years, they had experienced many things. The attitude of cultivators towards the primordial races was no longer tough. Instead, they were filled with fear. The southern region's southern dual sect was destroyed by the Bloodvine race, without a single super sect appearing. Without harming themselves, no one was willing to wade into these muddy waters. However, if the major sects and factions maintained that attitude, the primordial races would walk out of the forbidden grounds sooner or later, and invade and kill everywhere in Tianhuang mainland. At that time, who would be able to escape? When the nest is overturned, there are no unbroken eggs. Actually, it's not their fault, the old storyteller said. Firstly, the human race has never been threatened since ancient times. In such an environment, they would naturally be at ease and afraid of battle. Secondly, the humans' luck has indeed declined in this era. Whether it's Mahayana great ancestors or rulers, they're far fewer than in ancient times. Some super sects don't even have sovereigns. There's no way they can fight against the primordial races in a head-on clash. Su Zimo nodded. The Pankara Temple was one of them. The old storyteller continued. Thirdly, and this is also the most important point. Right now, the cultivation world lacks a peerless expert who can lead the human race. In the ancient era, there were peerless experts like the human emperor. With a single call, all the emperors in the world responded and none of them dared to disobey. But now, the human race lacks such an expert. Su Zimo gradually understood. Only by gathering the emperors of the world together could they fight against the primordial races. Who were emperors? All of them were top-tier existences in Tianhuang mainland. If there were no peerless experts suppressing and commanding the world, who would be willing to bow down and obey orders? Not even senior? Su Zimo asked. No. The old storyteller shook his head. Be it in terms of reputation or combat strength, I'm far inferior. With my identity as the storyteller of Enigma Palace, I might be able to gather some emperors. However, if we're counting on us to fight against the primordial races, I'm afraid it won't bode well for us. Su Zimo frowned with a heavy heart. In that case, if the primordial races joined forces and launched an unprecedented war against the human race, there was a high chance that the human race would be suppressed completely. At that time, the primordial races would regain control of Tianhuang mainland. The fate of the human race would be the same as in the primordial era. They would be enslaved and used as food while losing their freedom. The old storyteller thought for a moment and continued. Of course, you guys don't have to be too pessimistic. There are still some variables in this lifetime after all. With that said, the old storyteller smiled and looked at Su Zimo. Me. Su Zimo was stunned. The old storyteller nodded. Firstly, you have a clone that cultivates among the dragons. Furthermore, your status is noble, and you're the young master of the dragons. I believe that given your temperament, if the human race is in trouble, your dragon phoenix true body will definitely not sit idly by. Su Zimo nodded. If the human race was truly in trouble, the dragon phoenix true body would do its best to persuade the dragons to help the human race. The old storyteller continued. Secondly, the birth of the taboos. In the primordial era, 2 of the 3 taboos have already appeared. Furthermore, both of them are currently on the side of the human race. Their only weakness is that they have yet to truly grow. Su Zimo did not reply. Actually, there was a high chance that this lifetime would be an unprecedented situation, where the 3 primordial taboos would gather. If there was sufficient time, the 3 primordial taboos would grow, and the primordial races would definitely have no chance of winning. Unfortunately, the primordial races would not give them too much time. There's a third variable. The old storyteller looked at Su Zimo and paused for a moment. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Could the old storyteller have divined the existence of Wu Dao's true body? Actually, Wu Dao's true body was the greatest variable. Pausing for a moment, the old storyteller continued. The third variable is you. In this lifetime, the human race lacks a peerless expert who can command the world. Your body is perfectly fused with the creation Qinglian. Your future accomplishments are immeasurable. At that point, Su Zimo was certain that the old storyteller did not know of the existence of Wu Dao's true body despite his divine powers. Senior, your expectations are too high. Su Zimo laughed bitterly. I've only just entered the conjoint body realm, and am not even a half-martial ancestor, let alone command the world and make emperors submit to my orders. That's why this is the variable. The old storyteller said. In this lifetime, a war between the primordial races and the human race is inevitable. If you can grow into that peerless expert before that, the fate of the human race will change. You once changed the fates of all living beings. I hope that you can defy the heavens and change the fates of the human race as well. Chapter 1468. The old storyteller had high hopes for Su Zimo. Of course, as the old storyteller said, this was a variable. Su Zimo still had a long way to go if he wanted to grow to the point where all the emperors in the world would submit to him. But now the situation in Tianhuang mainland was changing rapidly. There was not much time left for Su Zimo. As he spoke, everyone entered Enigma Palace under the old storyteller's lead. They could not see the full appearance of Enigma Palace from the outside. It was only after entering the territory of Enigma Palace that they could truly sense the passage of time. That shock was far from what other sects and factions could compare to. Suddenly, the old storyteller frowned and exclaimed softly. His gaze shifted and landed on an area of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo looked over as well. A gigantic palace stood in that area. It was 1,000 feet tall and soared into the skies. It was divided into 9 levels, and each level could accommodate more than 100,000 people. There were 3 words written on the signboard of the palace: Book Collection Hall. Old man, what's wrong? Lin Xuanji asked casually, when he saw the old storyteller's strange expression. An outsider came. The old storyteller's expression darkened and his words were shocking. Lin Xuanji was shocked and asked, "What do you mean? An outsider came to the book collection hall?" The book collection hall stored many ancient secret manuals. The most important things inside were not only cultivation techniques and secret manuals, but also historical records and biographies. The book collection hall was an important place of Enigma Palace, and even the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace could not enter casually. If an outsider entered the book collection hall, it would be terrible. I'll go take a look. Lin Xuanji moved, and was about to run over after saying that. He left a long time ago, the old storyteller harumphed coldly. These people in the palace are truly a bunch of trash. They were fooled and didn't even know that an outsider came to the book collection hall. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he murmured, "Could it be him?" The old storyteller nodded slightly. "If I'm not wrong, the bloodline that died outside Enigma Palace was refined by this person as well. Monk Daming." The last doubt in Su Zimo's heart was finally resolved. Initially, he had his suspicions about why Monk Daming would set up such a trap for the sake of refining his bloodline. Firstly, there weren't many bloodlines left behind in this battle. Secondly, this was in front of Enigma Palace. He had taken a huge risk to come here and refine the bloodline. It was not in line with Monk Daming's character. It was only now that Su Zimo understood. Monk Daming's true goal for him to head to Enigma Palace and fight against the cultivators of Enigma Palace was not to refine his bloodline, but to obtain Enigma Palace's library. Now that he thought about it, the refinement of the bloodline before Enigma Palace should have been done casually by Monk Daming after he arrived at the library. If Heavenly Secrets did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he might have had a chance of survival. However, an accident was bound to happen if he activated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in an intense battle against Yen Beichen. Heavenly Secrets viewed Monk Daming as his greatest opponent. However, right from the beginning, Monk Daming did not care about Heavenly Secrets at all. A single casual action from him cost the life of the most outstanding successor of Enigma Palace. "Senior, do you know who that person is?" Su Zimo probed. "I've divined it before." The old storyteller paused for a moment and shook his head. "However, I didn't manage to divine it. That person is extremely powerful." After the old storyteller appeared, Su Zimo felt that he was omniscient, omnipotent and knowledgeable about the past and present. However, even the old storyteller could not divine Monk Daming's identity. Right now, Su Zimo was probably the only one who truly knew about Monk Daming. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment, and did not tell the old storyteller about Monk Daming's identity, no matter what. Monk Daming had saved his life before. Furthermore, even Su Zimo did not dare to confirm if Monk Daming was righteous or evil at the moment. "Let's go to the library to take a look and see what's missing," the old storyteller said indifferently, and led Su Zimo's group to the library. The old storyteller flicked his sleeves gently, and the door of the hall opened. Two figures were lying on the ground in front of the door. They were tied up and could not move at all. The two of them did not seem to have been muted and could not speak. They could only glare at the old storyteller with widened eyes. "Senior brother, junior brother, you guys." Lin Xuanji froze for a moment. The two of them were the other two disciples of the old storyteller, DG and Huangji. "Although I know that this isn't good, I don't know why, but I really feel like laughing. Ha 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 ha." Lin Xuanji clutched his stomach in laughter. The two cultivators were ashamed, and their faces were flushed red. The old storyteller extended his finger and swiped it across the void at the two of them. The ropes on their bodies were severed into pieces instantly. Both of them were at the conjoint body realm, and the ropes that could tie them up were definitely not ordinary. However, the old storyteller had crippled them so casually. The two of them stood up and ran in front of the old storyteller, kneeling down. "Master, this disciple failed to protect the book collection hall and deserves to die. Please punish me, master," DG kowtowed repeatedly. Huangji had an ashamed expression as he whispered, "Master, I've embarrassed you." Su Zimo lamented internally. The old storyteller's evaluation is right. DG is old-fashioned and follows the rules, while Huangji looks honest and sincere. "Get up. It's not your fault." The old storyteller did not have the intention to blame them and continued asking, "Do you guys know why he came to the library?" "I don't know," Huangji replied honestly. "However, That person did not stay in the library for long before leaving. He said that he was here to take a look at the Mystic Heaven record. Once he's done reading it, he'll definitely return it and won't spread it. Mystic Heaven record. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. That was the foundation of Enigma Palace. It was created by Fairy Ling Long and was all-encompassing. The ancient human emperor had to perfect it before it was finally formed. To think that it would be stolen by monk Daming today, that was a huge sum of money. The old storyteller did not enter the hall and merely closed his eyes to sense for a moment before nodding. He has indeed taken away the Mystic Heaven record. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. DG knelt down once more and kowtowed. His forehead was covered in blood, and he had no intention of stopping. Senior brother, hurry and get up. Don't damage your head. Lin Xuanji hurried forward and pulled DG up from the ground forcefully. Fufu. Suddenly the old storyteller laughed. DG and Huangji were both confused. The two of them even felt like dying. They didn't know how the old storyteller could still laugh. Impressive, the old storyteller praised. To think that he would come to Enigma Palace and steal the Mystic Heaven record. Impressive, impressive. Master, why are you praising him? The loss of the Mystic Heaven record is a huge matter. Huangji could not help but ask. Forget it, let him be. The old storyteller smiled casually. That person is rather interesting. He merely said that he wanted to borrow the book. Furthermore, he promised that he wouldn't spread it and would return it. Chapter 1469. Standing in front of the library, Su Zimo suddenly recalled something. This was his speculation regarding monk Daming's identity. According to the old storyteller, there were many ancient books in the library that recorded many things. If that was the case, there was a high chance that he would be able to verify it in the books. Senior, can I enter the library to take a look? Su Zimo said. I won't look at the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Enigma Palace. I merely want to look for historical records from tens of thousands of years ago, to verify some things. How can that do? Before the old storyteller could reply, DG glared and said in a deep voice, Who are you? The library is an important place. How can an outsider like you enter so casually? Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. Senior brother, stop talking. Didn't an outsider enter earlier on, and even steal the Xiantian record? If anyone from Enigma Palace finds out about this, it'll definitely cause a huge uproar. DG's face flushed red from being mocked. However, he still argued, That's different. Since you've already made a mistake, you can't repeat it. That's enough. The old storyteller waved it off and nodded to Su Zimo. Of course, you're qualified to take a look. However, there are many books in the library, and the historical records are as vast as the sea. Why don't you tell me which year you want to take a look, and let Xuanji bring you there directly? That way, you won't have to waste your effort searching for it. About 30,000 to 40,000 years ago, Su Zimo replied ambiguously. All right. The old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji. Bring Araki Takashi in. The old storyteller glanced sideways and smiled when he saw that Demoness Ji was also curious. If you're curious, follow me in and take a look as well. Master, you mustn't do that. DG could not hold it in and stood out once more, saying in a deep voice, It's one thing for you to make an exception once, but how can you do it again and again? Where are the rules of the sect? She's the successor of ancestral master Ling Long. Do you think she's qualified? The old storyteller glared at DG and asked with a huff. DG was taken aback. He stammered, then he should be qualified. Brat, are you trying to ascend to the heavens? The old storyteller pointed at Earth Machine's nose and scolded him. How dare you come out and tell me what to do now? How dare you talk to me about the rules of the sect? On the other side, Lin Xuanji waved to Su Zimo and Demoness Ji. Let's go, I'll bring you guys in. After being scolded by the old storyteller, Earth Machine had completely wilted. He was so scared that he did not even dare to breathe loudly. As for the old storyteller, he looked at the backs of Su Zimo and the other two. He stroked the 3 locks of long beard on his chest and muttered softly. The major event from 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. The battle between the Blood Demon and Monk Daming? In the book collection palace, there was a stone pillar that reached the heavens. It was so thick that it would require dozens of people to wrap their arms around it. It stood in the middle of the hall and connected the entire library. Many ancient books were placed around the stone pillars. They were densely packed together. There were even more ancient books and bamboo slips on the walls of the hall. Lin Xuanji was rather familiar with this place and let Su Zimo and Demoness Ji in, stopping after dozens of steps. The approximate events that happened 30,000 and 40,000 years ago are recorded in these ancient books. Take a look. Lin Xuanji pointed to an ancient book on the wall and said, "Thank you." Su Zimo thanked him and walked forward, picking up an ancient book casually and browsing through it. Demoness Ji leaned forward and picked up a book as well, reading it. After a long time, Demoness Ji was a little impatient. Initially, she came in to take a look out of curiosity. Who knew that the contents were so boring that she lost interest after a casual glance? However, Su Zimo was still browsing through it bit by bit, as though he was searching for something. Demoness Ji did not leave either. She accompanied him quietly at the side and picked up an ancient book casually to pass the time. On the other side, Su Zimo flipped open another ancient book. After flipping through a few pages, he suddenly paused. The ancient book recorded the battle between the blood demon Dao Lord and Monk Daming 40,000 years ago. The records of that battle were similar to what Monk Yuan Bei said. The two of them fought 3 times without a victor being decided. After the final battle, both of them went missing. Their fate was unknown, and their whereabouts were unknown. To date, they had not appeared and should have died long ago. What Su Zimo wanted to see was not that battle. It was about the background of Monk Daming. There was a sentence recorded in that ancient book. Monk Daming is not human, but a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race. He was abandoned by the Heavenly Eye race, and was later taken in by Daming Monastery. True enough, that sentence confirmed Su Zimo's guess on 6-Star Mountain. Monk Daming was not human, but of the Heavenly Eye race. Back when he met Monk Daming for the first time in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo vaguely saw a blood scar on Monk Daming's glabella. However, the blood scar was covered by Monk Daming's long hair, and was not obvious. It was only when he witnessed Monk Daming fighting against the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestor on 6-Star Mountain that he saw it clearly. That blood scar was way too similar to the Heavenly Eye of the Heavenly Eye race. That was also the reason why the blood scar was able to defend against Qinglian's sword and the essence spirit secret skill of the Bloodvine race's half-martial ancestor. That was because the Heavenly Eye was the strongest method of the Heavenly Eye race to begin with. In that case, Monk Daming had not truly used his trump card, the Heavenly Eye. He was merely defending with his Heavenly Eye. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the apocalyptic scene would be if that Heavenly Eye were to open and release an attack. At the same time, that resolved another doubt in Su Zimo's mind. The skeleton in the stone coffin deep underground back then was Monk Daming. However, Monk Daming was someone from 40,000 years ago. Monk Daming had been trapped in the underground stone coffin for 40,000 years. Even a conjoint body mighty figure with a lifespan of 20,000 years would have exhausted their lifespans and died a long time ago, let alone Dharma Daojun. However, Monk Daming did not die. Instead, he appeared out of nowhere in this generation. Although the Mingwang prayer beads played a part in that, there was no way Monk Daming could have lived for more than 40,000 years. Today, Su Zimo finally understood. That was because Monk Daming was not human to begin with, but of the Heavenly Eye race. Even though he was a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race, his lifespan at the Dharma characteristic realm far exceeded that of humans. That was the reason why he could last for 40,000 years in the stone coffin. After resolving that mystery, Su Zimo was prepared to leave. Right then, he swept his gaze and caught sight of the ancient book in Demoness Ji's hands. His heart skipped a beat as he asked, "What's recorded in that ancient book of yours?" "Nothing much. There was a change in the fiend sex 20,000 years ago." Demoness Ji shrugged and replied casually, 20,000 years ago? Su Zimo's eyes lit up. "Let me take a look." According to the timeline, there was a tribulation of 10,000 demons 30,000 years ago. There was a war in the Great Qian Empire 10,000 years ago. In that case, something major might have happened 20,000 years ago. Chapter 1470. Back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo had once told Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost about the blood face that appeared in the 1,000-year blood sea of Thousand Demon Valley. Thereafter, the red-headed ghost mentioned the 1,000 Demon Calamity. Legend has it that the battle 30,000 years ago was extremely tragic. Not only were the demons of 1,000 Demon Valley involved, the other 7 demon regions were implicated as well. Countless fiend demons died in that battle, and even demon emperors died. After that battle, the 8 demon regions were severely injured. Therefore, that battle was known as the 1,000 Demon Calamity by the later generations. If the bloody face that appeared in the ruins of the Deqian Empire and the bloody face that appeared during the 1,000 Demons Tribulation were not coincidences, if that was the case, there was indeed a possibility that something major happened in Tianhuang mainland 20,000 years ago. Su Zimo received the ancient book that Demoness Ji handed over and continued reading. 6 Fiend Sects. Su Zimo murmured softly. Demoness Ji nodded. Actually, 20,000 years ago, Tianhuang mainland was divided into 9 immortal sects, 8 Buddhist monasteries and 6 fiend sections. Su Zimo knew about the 8 Buddhist monasteries. The 2 super sects of the Buddhist monasteries, Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, were destroyed in the Battle of the Great Qian Empire 10,000 years ago and evolved into the 6 Buddhist monasteries of today. He truly did not know about the 6 fiend sections. Demoness Ji said, 20,000 years ago, Heavenly Dipper sect was not among the 9 immortal sections. Instead, there was another major sect, Constellation sect. However, Malevolent Earth sect was not among the fiend sections. Later on, the Astral Emperor of Constellation sect failed his tribulation and was reduced to ashes by the Heavenly Tribulation. Constellation sect was in danger. The tribulation was so terrifying that even an emperor would die if he was the slightest bit careless. His body and soul would be destroyed. Demoness Ji continued. At that juncture, Patriarch Constellation was ambushed by a patriarch of the fiend sects and almost died. Enraged, Patriarch Constellation initiated a war between Constellation sect and the fiend sects. Among the 9 immortal sects, 5 super sects were involved in that war. As for the 6 fiend sects, all of them participated in the war. In the end, the war even escalated to a fight between emperors. As he listened to Demoness Ji's narration, Su Zimo browsed through the ancient books and compared them. According to the ancient records, more than 30 Mahayana patriarchs from both the immortal and demonic sects had fallen in this battle. Patriarch Xingxiu had also perished. Even 3 rulers had died. Seeing this, Su Zimo was secretly speechless. The foundation of a super sect was truly terrifying. Up till this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had rarely seen Mahayana patriarchs. That was because he had yet to reach that level. After all, the lifespan of a Mahayana ancestor was 100,000 years. Even if the super sects only produced 1 in 10,000 years, after 100,000 years of accumulation, there would be at least 10 of them. She sighed. In the end, the Dharma overlord of the Buddhist monasteries and the others had to step in to mediate and calm the battle. Even so, this battle has caused the demon sect to suffer great losses. As for the Constellation sect of the 9 immortal sects, it was split into 2 major sects. One of them is the current Heavenly Dipper sect of the 9 immortal sects. The other is Malevolent Earth sect of the 7 fiend sects. When he heard that, Su Zimo was enlightened. Back when he first met Demoness Ji, she was already disdainful towards Malevolent Earth sect, and even said that it was not considered as a true fiend sect. Now, he finally understood that the predecessor of Malevolent Earth sect was Constellation sect of the immortal sects. This battle was considered as a catastrophe for both the immortal and fiend sections. Constellation sect was even destroyed, and was known as the Calamity of Constellation in the future. After a moment, Demoness Ji saw that Su Zimo was still immersed in the ancient book, browsing repeatedly, as though he was searching for something. Zimo, what are you looking for? She asked. Su Zimo replied, I'm looking for the problem behind this battle. What do you mean? She was confused. Su Zimo did not reply. After flipping through the ancient book a few times, he asked, Who was the patriarch of the fiend sects that ambushed Patriarch Xingxiu? I'm not sure. Demoness Ji shook her head. Su Zimo pointed to the ancient book in his hands. That's the problem. Even the ancient books of Enigma Palace don't have any records of the identity of the patriarch of the fiend sects. The reason for the calamity of Constellation is because of this. However, no one knows who the patriarch of the fiend sects is. Demoness Ji frowned. What can that prove? This must be absolutely true. Otherwise, Patriarch Xingxiu wouldn't have been enraged and launched a war against the fiend sects. Su Zimo did not argue. Actually, it was just like the catastrophe of Great Qian. Be it the Thousand Demon Tribulation or the calamity of Constellation, there was the same strangeness behind both catastrophes. The catastrophe of Great Qian was because there were two people present who witnessed it personally. Monk Yuanbei and the red-headed ghost speculated, and Dai Yu made a move. Eventually, they were able to discover the true secret behind the catastrophe of Great Qian. However, the Thousand Demon Tribulation and calamity of Constellation happened 20,000 to 30,000 years ago. Those who experienced both catastrophes personally were probably long dead. Even if Su Zimo could sense that something was amiss with the two catastrophes, he would not be able to discover the true problem. The truth of the past might have been buried with time forever. However, this matter confirmed his conjecture. The Thousand Demon Tribulation, calamity of Constellation and calamity of Great Qian were not coincidences. Now that I think about it, another 10,000 years have passed since the catastrophe of Great Qian. Su Zimo murmured softly with a grim expression. The crisis of Tianhuang mainland did not only come from the primordial races. There was also a pair of invisible blood hands, stirring the winds and manipulating the masses behind the scenes. Let's go, let's leave this place. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and buried everything in his heart before leaving the library with Demoness Ji. The old storyteller did not leave and stood at the entrance of the hall, looking into the distance in deep thought. Ming Zhen, little fatty, Shi Jian and Yin Beichen were nowhere to be seen. They should have been arranged to rest by the cultivators of Enigma Palace. You found the answer? The old storyteller glanced sideways and asked with a smile. Su Zimo nodded. Initially, he entered the library with the intention of searching for Monk Daming's secrets. To think that he would accidentally find out about the catastrophe 20,000 years ago. You were the one behind the destruction of the Bloodvine race on 6-Star Mountain, right? The old storyteller asked. Yes. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before nodding. Monk Daming was partly responsible for this matter. However, since Monk Daming did not want to appear, Su Zimo did not mention it. Why did you come to Enigma Palace directly from 6-Star Mountain? The old storyteller asked again. Su Zimo was about to say something when he said in a deep voice, I was ordered to be killed by the Bloodvine race. Someone told me that Enigma Palace might be able to resolve it. The old storyteller's expression changed starkly as he turned around. A gray mist appeared in the old storyteller's eyes, as though he could see through all the secrets on Su Zimo. Indeed, the mist in the old storyteller's eyes dissipated gradually. Frowning, he extended his palm and pinched his fingers to divine. A divine glint flashed through his eyes as he hollered, Not good. Chapter 1471. Senior, what's wrong? Su Zimo asked hurriedly. The feeling that the old storyteller gave him was that he was either laughing or cursing, calm or decisive. He had never had such an expression before. The Bloodvine race is here, the old storyteller said, and waved his hands in front of him. Instantly, a mysterious and powerful power filled the void, blanketing the skies and enveloping the entire Enigma Palace. That power did not have a powerful killing intent. Instead, it seemed mysterious and ethereal. However, in the face of that power, Su Zimo felt as though he was as insignificant as a speck of dust that could be drowned at any moment. Go to the library and don't come out. The old storyteller waved his sleeves and pushed Su Zimo and Demoness Ji back into the library. With a bang, the doors of the hall closed. In the hall, Zimo held his breath and was a little nervous. Judging from the old storyteller's stance, the person who came from the Bloodvine race this time round was definitely not someone to be trifled with. He was at least an Ancestor Realm expert. Ancestor Realm experts of some primordial races could even fight against emperors of the human race. Swoosh! Right at this moment, a large expanse of blood-colored clouds drifted over from the distant horizon, surging over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it arrived before Enigma Palace. Mahayana Realm. Even though they were hiding in the library, Zimo and Demoness Ji could still sense the terrifying blood aura outside. This was far beyond the conjoint body realm. Monk Daming had once said that Tung Lingzi was dead in the Battle of Six-Star Mountain, and none of the 10,000 Bloodvine race survived. There was a high chance that the patriarch of the Bloodvine race would be alarmed. This time round he was right once again. In order to kill a conjoint body mighty figure like him, the Bloodvine race had actually sent a Mahayana patriarch. Zimo listened intently and was a little nervous. After all, he was the one who attracted the Bloodvine race. If a huge battle with Enigma Palace broke out because of this and many cultivators died, Zimo would definitely feel extremely guilty. At that instant, a small hand took the initiative to grab his hand. It was warm and soft, causing him to gradually calm down. Zimo looked over and saw Demoness Ji's bright eyes. This pair of eyes, which could turn all living things upside down and charm the world, revealed a trace of comfort and gentleness at this moment. It's okay. Senior Storyteller is here. Demoness Ji secretly sent a voice transmission. Zimo nodded and smiled. In the sky in front of Enigma Palace, the blood-colored clouds suddenly split open, and a blood-colored vine as thick as an ancient tree extended out from within. At the top of the blood vine, there was a human face with no eyes or nose. It opened its bloody mouth, revealing its ferocious fangs that flickered with a cold light. The blood vine seemed to be patrolling the Enigma Palace, searching for something over and over again. However, the blood vine seemed to know something as well. It continued to hover outside the exquisite killing formation, and did not dare to take a step forward. The commotion here had already alerted many Enigma Palace cultivators. Suddenly, the old storyteller's figure appeared in midair. Patriarch Blood Fate, what are you doing here at Enigma Palace? The old storyteller glared at the blood vine in midair coldly and said coldly, "Get lost." The old storyteller was extremely domineering and did not hold back at all. Under the old storyteller's holler, the blood-colored clouds dissipated and the blood vine retracted. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a figure that stood in midair. The patriarch Blood Fate did not look old and was only middle-aged. However, his eyes were filled with bloodthirst and killing intent, and his lips were scarlet. Hee. The patriarch Blood Fate laughed strangely. So it's the mystic sovereign guarding this place. What a coincidence. Let's not beat around the bush. Araki Takashi should be in Enigma Palace, right? Can't you see for yourself if he's in Enigma Palace? The old storyteller was expressionless as he sneered. Since you guys have issued a kill order for him, how can you not find him given your capabilities? Hee. The patriarch Blood Fate glared at the old storyteller coldly and smiled. Just now I even saw the aura of the kill order. It was right here. However, for some reason, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then go and look for it. Don't stay in Enigma Palace. Get lost. The old storyteller cursed again with a bone-chilling killing intent in his eyes. It was as though he was prepared to attack the next moment. Sensing something, the patriarch Blood Fate took a few steps back and sneered. Mystic Sovereign, let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't get involved in this mess. Araki Takashi has already been hunted down by the primordial 6 races. Today I can't sense Araki Takashi's aura. However, if the emperor of my Bloodvine race comes, he'll definitely be able to find Araki Takashi's whereabouts. At that time, if Araki Takashi's whereabouts are discovered in Enigma Palace, be prepared to suffer the wrath of the primordial 6 races. Noisy. Suddenly, the old storyteller reached out and slashed viciously in the direction of the patriarch Blood Fate as he hollered, "Great ripping art!" Swoosh! The old storyteller merely waved his hand, but an extremely terrifying power burst forth from his palm and tore the entire void into two. It's a great divine power. The Patriarch Bloodfate's expression changed starkly as he turned to flee. Even so, he was still a step too slow. He had not expected the old storyteller to be so domineering and wanted to suppress him without a second word. This great divine ability instantly descended upon his body. Instantly, the Patriarch Bloodfate's body was torn into countless pieces and blood mist spewed out. Under the power of the great divine power, the shattered pieces of flesh continued to explode, turning into blood mists. This was already considered as being dismembered into thousands of pieces. Even conjoint body mighty figures could regrow severed limbs, but they could not heal. However, right then, a blood light soared into the skies from the blood mist and fled into the distance. The blood mist in midair surged towards the blood light at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the Patriarch Bloodfate's body was healed completely. When the cultivators of Enigma Palace saw that, they exclaimed, "This must be the divine power that can only be comprehended at the Mahayana realm, blood rebirth. How terrifying! It's way too difficult to kill a Mahayana patriarch." Conjoint body mighty figures had boundless dharmic powers and could regrow severed limbs. At the Mahayana realm, they were extremely powerful. As long as their essence spirits were not destroyed, they could even regrow a single drop of blood, let alone a severed arm. What the Bloodfate Patriarch had used just now was the art of rebirth from a drop of blood. Dark Emperor, don't be smug. My bloodvine race will return. The Patriarch Bloodfate had already fled far away. However, his voice sounded from afar and was filled with resentment. The old storyteller had an indifferent expression as he looked at the fleeing blood light without chasing after it. Everyone disperse. The old storyteller returned to Enigma Palace and said casually. The cultivators of Enigma Palace dispersed one after another. However, all of them were still excited and discussed softly. Chapter 1472. Although Su Zimo and Demonis Ji were hiding in the library, they could still sense what was going on outside with their spirit consciousnesses. The two of them exchanged glances and could see the shock in each other's eyes. The power of the Mahayana realm had completely transcended other cultivation realms. Below the Jindan realm, most of them fought in melee combat with spirit arts. Above the Jindan realm, there were many more methods such as dharmic arts, secret skills, heaven and earth dharma characteristics, essence spirit fights, and so on. For Mahayana patriarchs, the strongest were divine powers. Divine powers were also the greatest difference between ancestor realm experts and conjoint body mighty figures. Although the divine power released casually by the old storyteller did not seem like much, its might was extremely terrifying. Even the body of the patriarch of the bloodvine race was torn into a blood mist. "It's fine now, you guys can come out." Just as Su Zimo and Demonis Ji were letting their imaginations run wild, the old storyteller's voice sounded, and the door of the library opened. "Thank you for saving us, Senior." Su Zimo arrived before the old storyteller and bowed deeply. "It's fine." The old storyteller shook his head slightly. However, there was still a hint of worry between his brows. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed something and asked probingly, "Senior, Enigma Palace has no way of dispelling the death token on me, right?" "Yes." The old storyteller did not hide anything and nodded. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled the scene of Patriarch Bloodfate arriving outside Enigma Palace just now. Patriarch Bloodfate did not seem to be certain that Su Zimo was in Enigma Palace either. Right then, the old storyteller explained, "When I saw the death token on you, I used a divine power to seal your aura temporarily and deceive the heavenly secrets." Su Zimo was enlightened. After the old storyteller realized that something was amiss, he waved his hands in front of him, and an extremely vast power enveloped the skies above Enigma Palace. It turned out that the old storyteller had already released a divine power at that time. The old storyteller said, "Under the concealment of this divine ability, even the Mahayana patriarchs of the primordial races will not be able to discover you. However," after pausing for a moment, the storyteller said, If a ruler of the Bloodvine race or a ruler of the Heavenly Eye race comes, I'm afraid my divine ability won't be able to be hidden. Su Zimo's vision darkened. In Tianhuang mainland, as an emperor, the storyteller was definitely one of the strongest cultivators he had encountered so far. However, even the old storyteller in the Enigma Palace could do nothing about it. This meant that even other sects such as Misty Peak and 100 Refinement sect had no other choice. Although Tianhuang mainland was huge, there was no place for him with the assassination badge around. Then what should we do? She was a little anxious and asked, Senior, you're extremely resourceful. I'm sure you have a way. Senior, since the Enigma Palace can't do anything about it, I'll leave tomorrow. Su Zimo pondered for a while and said in a deep voice. To be fair, Su Zimo did not have any leads either, and did not know where he should go next. However, if he stayed in Enigma Palace, there would be no benefits apart from implicating them. To think that the Battle of 6-Star Mountain would cause me to fall into such a situation. Su Zimo murmured internally. Although he had obtained the Carefree Wood, he was also given a kill order, and would be hunted down by the Bloodvine race eventually. There was no time or place for him to refine and cultivate. The outcome of Qingmian's true body was most likely destined. This was a dead-end situation with no solution. The storyteller looked at Su Zimo with a deep gaze and suddenly asked, Do you regret it? Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before he understood that the storyteller was asking him if he regretted the Battle of 6-Star Mountain. Su Zimo laughed involuntarily and shook his head. I don't regret it. Even if I have to do it again, I'll still kill my way up 6-Star Mountain. As expected of Araki Takashi, the storyteller nodded in satisfaction and praised. Actually, it's not impossible to get rid of the kill order on you and break out of this deadlock. Suddenly the storyteller said. Delighted, Su Zimo asked hurriedly, Please enlighten me, Senior. The storyteller narrowed his eyes and said slowly, There's an unknown place in Tianhuang mainland that even Mahayana patriarchs and emperors don't dare to step foot in. Ah, Su Zimo asked. Even the emperors of the primordial races don't dare to step foot in? That's the forbidden grounds of the primordial races. The storyteller's words were shocking. In the cultivation world, there was a saying that the 9 forbidden grounds of the human race were corresponding to the habitats of the primordial 9 races. But now, this was the first time Su Zimo heard that there was a forbidden ground of the primordial races in Tianhuang mainland, where even the emperors of the primordial races did not dare to step foot in. Senior, are you referring to that place? Demoness Ji seemed to have thought of something and looked towards the west instinctively. That's right, the storyteller nodded. Far west Kunlun Ruins. Kunlun Ruins, Su Zimo murmured softly. That name was extremely unfamiliar to him. What exactly is that place? Su Zimo could not help but ask. Nobody knows what's there or what's there. The storyteller shook his head. However, one thing is certain. That's the final battlefield of the Primordial War. The Primordial War. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The storyteller said in a deep voice. To be precise, that place was originally called Kunlun. Because of an earth-shattering battle that turned it into a gigantic ruin, it was called Kunlun Ruins in the future. Legend has it that in the Primordial War, the Taboo Dragon Phoenix and Taboo Kuan Peng led the Primordial 8 races, and countless other races to attack Kunlun, and fought against the 10,000 races led by the Taboo Ho. Hold on. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked, Senior, it should be the Primordial 9 races, right? The storyteller shook his head. According to Ancestral Master Linglong's records, there seemed to only be the Primordial 8 races at the beginning of the Primordial Era. The Protoss only appeared in the later stages of the Primordial Era. They were not powerful yet during the Primordial War. Su Zimo frowned slightly. For some reason, he had a feeling that there was something unusual hidden within. However, he could not figure it out for a moment. The storyteller's description of the Primordial War was somewhat different from what the Grand Elder of the Candle Dragons said. After all, that was something that happened during the Primordial Era. Even the truth of the Thousand Demon Tribulation and Constellation Tribulation from 20,000 to 30,000 years ago was difficult to find out, let alone the fact that that battle was ancient. The only thing that was certain was that the primordial war was indeed extremely tragic. It was much more tragic than the war between the human race and the primordial 9 races in the ancient era. Countless races were annihilated in the primeval war. The 3 taboo heavens were indeed dead in that battle. The primordial 9 races were severely injured as a result. The primordial era ended because of that. Thereafter, they entered the ancient era. The human race seized the opportunity to rise, and the cultivation civilization gradually prospered, ushering in a glorious era. Finally, the ancient war against the primordial 9 races broke out. Chapter 1473. The old storyteller's voice continued. Too many experts died in Kunlun ruins, countless. In that great battle, countless divine abilities were unleashed. The Kunlun mountain range has already been shattered. Even now, there are still extremely terrifying divine powers in those ruins that have not dissipated through history. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. In the primordial war, countless races were annihilated. The primordial 9 races were severely injured, and the 3 taboos were all dead. How vast and terrifying was the remnant power of divine powers in Kunlun ruins? It was simply unimaginable, the old storyteller said. Those terrifying divine powers formed an extremely unique domain. Any Mahayana patriarch that stepped into it would easily cause a divine power storm. Divine power storm. Su Zimo and Demoness Ji exchanged glances. Given their cultivation realms, it was difficult for them to imagine what kind of existence the so-called divine power storm was. In fact, the two of them did not know much about divine powers. The old storyteller said in a deep voice, if a minor divine power storm is triggered, the Mahayana patriarch might be able to survive. However, if a major divine power storm is triggered, it'll be disastrous. If a peerless divine power storm is formed, even a ruler will be torn into pieces if he steps into it. Minor divine powers, major divine powers. Su Zimo was even more confused. In the ancient era, when Kunlun ruins was just formed, more than 10 Mahayana patriarchs and 2 rulers of the primordial races wanted to enter to investigate. The old storyteller said. Unfortunately, the patriarchs and 2 rulers were all annihilated. Psst! Su Zimo took in a breath of cold air. In that case, it was not an exaggeration to say that Kunlun ruins was a forbidden ground for the primordial races. Thereafter, every tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years, there would be experts of the primordial races who were indignant and wanted to enter Kunlun ruins. After all, there were too many treasures left in the ruins of the primordial war. It was unimaginable. Su Zimo nodded. In the ancient war, numerous races perished and countless powerhouses perished. The treasures left behind by these powerhouses all became ownerless. If all the treasures in the ruins could be taken out, even the combined foundation of the 9 immortal sects, 8 demon regions, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries would not be able to compare, the old storyteller said. However, among the many experts from the primordial races who entered the Kunlun ruins one after another, only one managed to escape. He was also scared half to death. From then on, no one from the primordial races dared to step into the ruins. Where are the Grand Ascension stage patriarchs of the human race? Su Zimo asked curiously. That won't work either. The old storyteller shook his head and said with certainty, there was no need to ask. Since the ancient era, there must have been patriarchs of the human race who entered and did not come out alive. Pondering for a moment, Demoness Ji said, since Mahayana patriarchs can't enter, the Dharma Daojun or conjoint body mighty figures can enter. Yes, the old storyteller nodded. Indeed, cultivators below the Mahayana realm won't attract a divine power storm if they enter. However, the environment in the Kunlun ruins is harsh and extremely dangerous. There are dangers everywhere, and every step is alarming. Indeed, there were cultivators below the Mahayana realm who entered to explore, but very few returned alive. Furthermore, those people did not even enter the depths of the Kunlun ruins. They merely circled around the periphery and could not hold on any longer. After pondering for a moment, the old storyteller said, "Before ancestral master Linglong entered the Mahayana realm, she took a huge risk and entered the Kunlun ruins for a primordial divine herb to save someone. According to ancestral master Linglong's records, not only are there treasures left behind by experts in the Kunlun ruins, there are even countless spirit herbs and trees from the primordial era growing inside. Of course, apart from that, there are also many extinct living beings from the various major races left behind from the primordial war. Those living beings lived, multiplied and fused with each other in the Kunlun ruins. They had already adapted to that environment and became a new race. Ancestral master Linglong called them the Kunlun race." Su Zimo gradually understood. The Kunlun race was not a new race, but a race formed by fusing various major races. There could be humans, monster beasts, or even the plant race in there. The Kunlun ruins was like a world isolated from the world. And the Kunlun race was the master of that world. They would not leave the Kunlun ruins, but they were extremely resistant to the outside world. If they discovered that someone from the outside had barged in, they would definitely not let them leave. Araki Takeshi, the old storyteller, said in a deep voice, "The Kunlun ruins is a unique domain formed by the divine abilities left behind from the primordial era. If you cultivate there for a long time, the killing order in your body will definitely be gradually resolved. If you enter the Kunlun ruins, you must be careful. Avoid the people from the Kunlun race, and find a secret and safe place in the periphery of the Kunlun ruins. Work hard to cultivate and step into the Mahayana realm as soon as possible." Su Zimo nodded and bowed deeply. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." Enigma Palace did not know much about the Kunlun ruins either. It was because ancestral master Linglong had made a trip there back then and left behind precious records. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked again, "Senior, what are the minor and major divine abilities that you mentioned just now?" The old storyteller smiled and said, "You'll understand these things after you enter the Mahayana realm. There's no harm in telling you in advance. Divine abilities can be divided into 3 types. They are the minor divine abilities, major divine abilities, and supreme divine abilities. The power of these 3 divine abilities will naturally increase in order and become stronger." Su Zimo nodded secretly and asked, "Just now, what's the divine ability that the Patriarch of Blood Fortune released that can reconstruct his body with a single drop of blood?" "That's one of the minor divine abilities," the old storyteller said indifferently. Su Zimo and Demoness Ji were shocked. A powerful technique like rebirth from a drop of blood was only a minor divine ability. Just imagine how terrifying the power of a great divine ability and an exceptional divine ability would be. The old storyteller said, "There are more than 10,000 types of minor divine abilities and hundreds of thousands of major divine abilities. However, there are only dozens of known supreme divine abilities. Under normal circumstances, even the combined power of more than 10 minor divine abilities cannot match a single major divine ability. Even the combined power of 100 major divine abilities cannot defend against a single supreme divine ability. Although there were only 3 levels of divine abilities, the difference in strength was getting greater." After pausing for a moment, the old storyteller hesitantly said, "Of course, in ancestral master Linglong's letter, she mentioned that perhaps there is a divine ability above the exceptional divine ability. It is called the supreme divine ability. By supreme, it means that there is no divine ability above it. It's supreme." Of course, ancestral master Linglong has heard of that as well. After all, there has never been a supreme divine ability since the primordial era. The old storyteller smiled. If such a divine ability truly exists, Tianhuang mainland will probably be reduced to ruins once it's released. The concept of supreme divine abilities is truly too illusory. Chapter 1474. Throughout history, there have been thousands of human cultivators and countless conjoint body mighty figures. However, less than 1 in 10 can reach the Mahayana realm, comprehend divine powers, and become patriarchs. Do you know why? The old storyteller asked. Divine power tribulation? Suzimo attempted to reply. He had once heard someone mention that if one wanted to advance from the conjoint body realm to the Mahayana realm, they had to transcend a tribulation. That was the divine power tribulation. Throughout history, this divine power tribulation had buried countless paragons and monster incarnates. The owners of the 30-odd stone statues in the Tao inheritance ground were the most famous paragons and monster incarnates in Tianhuang mainland back then. However, those people were still unable to take the final step and were stuck before the Mahayana realm, regretting it for the rest of their lives. The old storyteller's expression was a little emotional as he nodded. Cultivation is a heaven-defying path to begin with. During this period, one will experience countless dangers. These dangers either come from one's mental demons or the killing of the outside world. However, there has never been a type of danger that can be called a tribulation. For example, before this, be it breaking through to the Jin Dan, nascent soul or void reversion realm, they would encounter danger. However, none of them could be called a tribulation. Anything that could be called a tribulation was definitely difficult to transcend and had a slim chance of survival. The old storyteller said slowly, the so-called divine power tribulation is actually referring to the three major calamities of the Tao: wind, fire, and thunder. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat, and he found it familiar. The old storyteller smiled. Seems like you've thought of the Tao inheritance ground as well. Suzimo nodded. There was a three tribulations domain in the Tao inheritance ground, and there were three tribulations within. They were the Yin wind tribulation, karmic fire tribulation, and thunder tribulation. The old storyteller said, back then, the many paragons and monster incarnates who left behind their legacies there set up the three tribulations. How could they have set them up casually? There must be a deeper meaning. A look of realization flashed through Suzimo's eyes. However, the old storyteller changed the topic. The three major calamities of the divine power tribulation are tribulations sent by heaven and earth. They're much more terrifying than the ones in the three tribulations domain. That wind is no ordinary wind. It's the wind of the heavenly dipper. It was as sharp as a blade, as sharp as an awl. It entered from the top of the head, passing through the 5 viscera, the 6 bowels, and the 9 apertures. Blood, flesh, and hair would all be blown away. The astral winds are all pervasive. If one's primordial spirit is not condensed enough, it will also be blown away. Suzimo and Demoness Ji were secretly shocked when they heard that. That fire isn't an ordinary fire either. It's the earth fiend fire. Born from the spring beneath his feet, he went straight into the heavenly gate. If the physical body is not strong and the bloodline is not strong, in an instant, the internal organs will be turned into ashes, the limbs will rot, and the cultivation of 10,000 years will be reduced to ashes. The old storyteller continued, that lightning isn't mortal lightning, but 5 elements divine lightning. The 7th metal divine lightning, 2nd wood divine lightning, 10th water divine lightning, 3rd fire divine lightning, and 5th earth divine lightning. The slightest mistake will cause one's soul to scatter. If we can't get through these 3 calamities, our bodies and souls will be destroyed, and not even our corpses will remain. Of course, if we can get through it, we will be able to comprehend a divine power during the tribulations of the 3 calamities. Rebirth from a drop of blood. Suzimo finally understood. The reason why every Mahayana patriarch knew about rebirth from a drop of blood was because they could only comprehend that divine power under the baptism of the 3 calamities. Suddenly, Suzimo recalled a question that he had in the past and could not help but ask. Senior, the Mahayana patriarchs of the cultivation world rarely appear. Could they all be in seclusion in the various major sects? Up till this point of his cultivation, Suzimo had truly encountered too few Mahayana patriarchs. That was strange. It was as though all the Mahayana patriarchs were hiding in a single place and would not come out unless something major happened. Patriarch Qing Cheng seemed to have returned from another place when something happened to Enigma Palace this time round. The old storyteller said, generally speaking, after entering the Mahayana realm, one won't care much about Dharma treasures or secret skills. The only goal of Mahayana patriarchs is to comprehend divine powers as much as possible. After entering the Mahayana realm, the only way to raise one's cultivation and combat strength is to comprehend divine powers. With every divine power comprehended, one's essence, spirit, body and bloodline will be baptized by the power of the divine power, and there will be an obvious increase in combat strength. In the cultivation world, the best place to comprehend divine powers is not in Tianhuang mainland, but... At that point, the old storyteller paused and looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile. It was clear that he was testing him. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Judging from the old storyteller's tone, he definitely knew of that place. Furthermore, there was a high chance that it was a place that he was rather familiar with. However, how could a place that he was familiar with be the place where a patriarch comprehended divine powers? All of a sudden, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind as he blurted out, "The ancient battlefield." The ancient battlefield was a space of its own, and was a broken world. Su Zimo had been to the elementary and intermediate ancient battlefield before, but he had never heard of the advanced ancient battlefield. Now that he thought about it, the place where the patriarchs most likely comprehended divine powers was the advanced ancient battlefield. Su Zimo said, "If I'm not wrong, the last ranking of the Mystic Secrets rankings, the divine powers ranking, should be in the advanced ancient battlefield as well." "That's right." A look of admiration flashed through the old storyteller's eyes as he nodded slightly. There are many divine powers left behind from the ancient war in the final ancient battlefield. These divine abilities might be in some ruins, on some mountain peak, or even in a blade of grass or a tree. Actually, there are even more divine powers left in the Kunlun ruins, and they are even more terrifying. However, because the primordial war was way too tragic, the environment there is extremely sensitive. Once Mahayana patriarchs step in, they will form a divine power storm. Against the divine power storm, they can't even survive, let alone comprehend divine powers. On the other hand, the environment left behind by the ancient battlefield is relatively gentle. As long as you can discover the remnant power of divine powers, you can comprehend it. Su Zimo understood. In order to raise their cultivation and combat strength, the Mahayana patriarchs of the cultivation world would search for divine powers and comprehend them in the ancient battlefield. During this process, the Mahayana patriarchs naturally would not take any vendetta or fights that happened in the cultivation world to heart. After all, it was not easy to find a divine power. The process of comprehending divine powers was even rarer. That was also the reason why, unless the sect encountered a calamity, the cultivators of the sect would not alarm the patriarchs, and the patriarchs would not appear easily either. Can only Mahayana patriarchs enter that ancient battlefield? Su Zimo suddenly asked. The old storyteller shook his head. That's not absolute. However, given your current body and essence spirit, you won't be able to withstand the power of divine powers if you want to forcefully comprehend them. The old storyteller saw through Su Zimo's intentions and knew that the latter wanted to comprehend divine powers as soon as possible to enter the ancestor realm. However, there were no shortcuts to cultivation. The old storyteller said, "If you want to comprehend divine powers, your body and essence spirit will have to reach a certain level. A grade 7 creation Qinglian is definitely not enough." Chapter 1475. In other words, the old man of storytelling meant that Su Zimo's Qinglian true body had to grow to grade 8 if he wanted to enter the advanced ancient battlefield. A grade 8 creation Qinglian was extremely difficult to nurture. In the ancient era, only the Buddha Emperor had managed to nurture one. Even if Su Zimo refined and absorbed that huge chunk of carefree wood, it would be difficult for the Qinglian true body to transform to grade 8. However, there was still a chance. The creation Qinglian had already fused with his body and bloodline. As long as his cultivation increased, the Qinglian true body would grow as well. Although Kunlun ruins was filled with danger, there were also countless treasures. Furthermore, the experts of the primordial races did not dare to enter the ruins. As long as he could avoid the dangers of Kunlun ruins, he could cultivate there forever. For Su Zimo, this was a rare opportunity and cultivation ground. You guys can rest here for a few days. The old man storytelling smiled gently. I can hide that divine power of mine for a few more days. At the very least, you'll be safe in Enigma Palace for this period of time. Senior, what's the name of that divine power of yours? Su Zimo asked curiously. Deceiving heaven, the old man storytelling said slowly. This is a peerless divine power. Ah, Su Zimo and Demoness G exclaimed. The two of them were lucky enough to witness a peerless divine power with their own eyes, and were both shocked and delighted. The old man storytelling said, there are many types of peerless divine powers, and they focus on different directions. Some focus on movement techniques while others focus on killing. For example, deceiving heaven is the #1 method to deceive the heavenly secrets. For example, endless vitality focuses on healing. Heaven and Earth's sleeve focuses on accommodating and transferring space. Burning the sky and boiling the sea, 6 paths of reincarnation, heaven's punishment, and other peerless skills focus on killing. Burning heavens and boiling seas, universe in the sleeve, 6 paths of reincarnation. Su Zimo's eyes lit up when he heard that. He was getting closer and closer to those legendary powers. Do you guys know where the boundary between Mahayana patriarchs and emperors is? The storyteller asked again. What kind of patriarch can be conferred the title of emperor? Su Zimo and Wang Chong looked at each other and shook their heads. Comprehend a peerless divine ability, the old man said. Only after comprehending a peerless divine ability can one be conferred the title of emperor and be called a true emperor. Su Zimo revealed a look of understanding. No wonder the Smoky Wave Traveler had said that even a ruler belonged to the Mahayana realm. The reason why he was called an emperor was because his ancestor had comprehended a peerless divine ability. The old storyteller continued. The combat prowess of a ruler is different because each ruler has comprehended a unique divine ability in a different direction. For example, the Dharma overlord of the past comprehended a peerless divine ability that focused on healing. In the end, he was still no match for that ancestral torch dragon. Hearing this, Su Zimo sighed in his heart. Even the old storyteller did not know the truth about what happened at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley back then. The Dharma overlord sacrificed his limited lifespan to extend the life of the red-headed ghost, because he did not want the dragons and humans to break out into another war and massacre. Of course, if it's just a difference in the focus of comprehending peerless divine abilities, the difference in combat strength won't be too great, the old storyteller said. If someone can comprehend a second, third, or even more peerless divine abilities, their combat strength will increase exponentially. That's way too difficult. Demoness G shook her head. Comprehending a single peerless divine ability and becoming an emperor was already 1 in a billion, let alone comprehending 2 or 3 peerless divine abilities. There was always a limit to a person's strength. Even emperors did not have that much time and energy. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked, how many peerless divine abilities did the eternal human emperor comprehend back then? Demoness G revealed a curious expression as well. A total of 6. The old storyteller said slowly. Su Zimo and Wang Chong were shocked. The old storyteller said, since the ancient era, many paragons and monster incarnates have appeared, and their accomplishments even surpassed that of the human emperor. Su Zimo nodded. Take him and the fallen Diin for example. At the very least, their accomplishments in the Jin Dan realm had already surpassed that of the human emperor. However, among those monster incarnates, there were very few who could become emperors. In fact, none of them could even compare to the human emperor, let alone surpassing him in the end. Suddenly, Demoness G asked, how many peerless divine abilities did the fiend emperor Hatred comprehend back then? 5. The old storyteller said. However, given the fiend emperor Hatred's talent, he should have been able to comprehend 6 and be comparable to the human emperor if he did not commit suicide. As for the remaining Buddha, Sword, Saber, and Thunder emperors, they only comprehended 3 peerless divine abilities. Most of the ancient emperors only comprehended a single peerless divine ability. That's a huge difference. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. Even famous emperors such as the Buddha and Sword Emperors were two peerless divine abilities, away from the fiend emperor hatred. The difference between them and the human emperor was even greater. The old storyteller said, "Therefore, if there was no human emperor, the human race would have definitely lost the ancient war." Legend has it that the human emperor reversed the entire situation in the ancient war single-handedly. It was only now that Su Zimo knew that the legend was not exaggerated at all. Su Zimo thought for a moment and asked in a deep voice, "How many peerless divine abilities did the emperors of the human race comprehend in this generation?" 3. The old storyteller sighed gently. Su Zimo finally understood the old storyteller's pessimism. The strength of the human race in this generation was truly far inferior compared to the ancient era. In the ancient war, even with the existence of the human emperor, the human race only won a Pyrrhic victory, let alone this generation. Don't think about those things first. The old storyteller looked at Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, "Right now, the most important thing for you is to cultivate and grow as soon as possible." "I understand," Su Zimo nodded. The old storyteller gave a few more reminders before leaving. Su Zimo and the other person stayed in Enigma Palace for the time being. Yen Beichen's injuries gradually improved. In a few days he was almost fully recovered. However, the wound in his heart could no longer be healed. There was still a deathly stillness in his eyes, without the slightest bit of light. Su Zimo sighed internally. As he had expected, after Yen Beichen killed Heavenly Secrets, he lost the obsession in his heart, and could no longer find any hope of survival. The moment he left, Yen Beichen would probably commit suicide. Su Zimo wanted to console him, but realized that he did not know where to start. At that moment, any consolation would be useless. After a long silence, Su Zimo said, "Brother Yen, have you ever thought that there might be a power in the mysterious upper realm that can't save fellow Taoist Qin in Tianhuang mainland? The reason why I'm where I am today is because of a woman in the upper realm who changed my fate for me. Brother Yen, I believe that the power of the upper realm can control life and death as well. Everyone has to have a goal in life. My goal is to ascend to the upper realm and follow in her footsteps so that I can stand side by side with her." At the mention of that, Su Zimo's gaze was resolute, and he seemed to be radiating with brilliance. When Demoness Ji saw that from the side, she pursed her lips and a dim look flashed through her eyes. Everyone has to have a goal in life. Suddenly, Yen Beichen murmured softly and his eyes flickered. Right then, Lin Xuanji pushed open the door and entered. "Brother Su, someone's here for you." Chapter 1476. Someone's here. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Seeing how relaxed Lin Xuanji was, it was clear that the person was not an enemy. Right now, he was in an extremely dangerous situation, and was being hunted down by the primordial 6 races. If it was an old friend, who would dare to look for him at this moment? Right then, 2 people appeared at the entrance. When he saw the 2 of them, Su Zimo could not help but laugh. He hurried forward and bowed to one of them with cupped fists. "Greetings, master." That person was none other than mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. The other person was a young girl in her prime. Her wavy hair draped over her shoulders, and was a little yellow. However, it could not hide her peerlessly beautiful face. The girl's skin was whiter than snow, and her facial features were exquisite without any flaws. Although she was slightly inferior to Demoness Ji in terms of charm, her looks were comparable. Furthermore, the girl's eyes were not the ordinary black and white. Instead, there was a clear jade green in them, resembling clear water that shimmered with a different kind of beauty. What a beautiful lass. She seems to have grown a little. When Demoness Ji saw the girl, she could not help but praise. "Young master." The girl came to Su Zimo's side, and called out happily with joy in her eyes. The girl was none other than Nian Qi, who was taken in by Su Zimo in the capital of Great Zhou, before joining Misty Peak, and having half the bloodline of the Protoss flowing in her body. Su Zimo swept his gaze and nodded gently. "Not bad, you've already entered the conjoint body realm." Although Nian Qi was a remnant of the Protoss, her talent was terrifying, and her cultivation speed was close behind Suzimo, without being left behind. Although the bloodline of remnant beasts was impure, their achievements might not be inferior to others. For example, Monk Daming and the Blood Demon from 40,000 years ago were both remnant beasts. However, even the pure-blooded experts of the primordial races would be suppressed by the two of them at the same cultivation realm. Master, why are you guys here together? Suzimo asked. Extreme Fire smiled. When I heard that you were ordered to be killed by the primordial 6 races, I left 100 Refinement Sect and became a free man. I was prepared to look for you in the southern region. However, before I reached the southern region, I heard that a great battle had broken out at the Enigma Palace, so I rushed here. Fortunately, you didn't leave. Although Extreme Fire said it calmly, Suzimo was greatly moved. He had been ordered to be killed by the primordial 6 races, so everyone avoided him. The Pamkara temple did not even dare to let him enter the temple, worried that he would implicate himself. But Extreme Fire came to find him immediately. Furthermore, Extreme Fire had already prepared for the worst. He was afraid that he would implicate 100 Refinement Sect, and left 100 Refinement Sect in advance to regain his freedom. Not long after I arrived here, I met this girl. Extreme Fire pointed at Nianqi and continued. Suzimo looked at Nianqi. Nianqi smiled. I also heard that you were being hunted down by the primordial 6 races, and wanted to stay by your side to help you. I'm already at the conjoint body realm, and Master Immortal Crane agreed to let me come over as well. Master Nianqi, you guys sigh. Suzimo sighed gently, but a warm current flowed through his heart. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had roamed Tianhuang mainland and made countless enemies. However, he had also gotten to know many hot-blooded friends that he could treat with sincerity. Elder brothers. Those people were loyal, and did not leave him even though they knew that he was in danger. Extreme Fire and Nianqi were the same. Yan Beichen was the same. Demoness Ji was the same. Little Fatty and Shijian were the same. Extreme Fire said in a deep voice. Zimo, you're being hunted down by the primordial 6 races, and it's difficult for you to find a place to stay in Tianhuang mainland. However, there's a place that might have a chance of survival. Oh. Curious, Suzimo asked, where is it? Extreme Fire said. It's the place where I nearly died and obtained Night Spirit, and the Candlelight Sword formation. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of a possibility. Extreme Fire continued. That's the far west of Tianhuang mainland, Kunlun ruins. Indeed. Extreme Fire was the one who brought the egg of the god's corpse out of Kunlun ruins. Suzimo had just thought of that conjecture as well. Extreme Fire had once told him that he nearly died while exploring a primordial ruin. The most famous and largest primordial ruin in Tianhuang mainland was probably Kunlun ruins. Most importantly, Kunlun ruins was the battlefield of the primordial war. That was inextricably linked to Night Spirit as well. Ever since the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, Night Spirit had been separated from him, and his whereabouts were unknown. However, Suzimo believed that Night Spirit would not die so easily. If Night Spirit was still alive, was it possible that he was in Kunlun ruins? Extreme Fire said. After all, I've entered that primordial ruin before and know a little about it. If we're together, our chances of survival might be higher. Suzimo nodded thoughtfully. Originally, the Kunlun ruins was a place for him to cultivate. However, now that he thought about how Night Spirit was most likely in Kunlun ruins, he was filled with anticipation. Right then, Yan Beichen suddenly sat up from the couch. Brother Yan, how are you? Suzimo hurried forward and asked softly. At that moment, Yan Beichen looked better. He looked at Suzimo fixedly and asked again. Zimo, is there really a power in the upper realm that can save Pian Ran? I believe so. Suzimo nodded. Actually, a dead person could not be revived. This was the reincarnation of the Great Tao, and even he could not be sure. However, at that moment he could not care less. Right then, the storyteller old man appeared in front of Yan Beichen out of thin air, and said in a deep voice, There are endless mysteries in the world. Perhaps Tianhuang mainland is just a well. Only by jumping out of this well can you see a wider world. Perhaps you can come into contact with the mysteries of life and death in that world. However, if you kill yourself now, you'll never have the chance. The weight of the storyteller old man's words was much heavier and more credible than Su Zimo's. True enough. Gradually, life returned to Yin Beichen's eyes, and they shone with an increasingly bright glint. Su Zimo knew that the storyteller old man's words had finally reignited Yin Beichen's hope. If revenge in the past was Yin Beichen's hope for survival, right now, saving Qin Pian Ran was Yin Beichen's hope for the future. This is the first time I'm seeing an old man personally persuading someone. At the side, Lin Xuanji secretly sent a voice transmission to Su Zimo with his spirit consciousness. The storyteller old man was the current mystic emperor. For an emperor of a generation to lower his status to persuade Yin Beichen, it was clear how highly the storyteller old man thought of Yin Beichen. The storyteller old man continued. Shura, you may have obtained the legacy of the fiend emperor hatred, but I believe that you're not another hatred. Create your own great Tao, and break free from the influence of the hatred sutra on you. Let go of the obsessions in your heart. I believe that the legacy left behind by the fiend emperor hatred does not wish for you to become a second him. You are Shura, the one and only unparalleled Shura in this world. Chapter 1477. Yin Beichen stroked the hatred fiend saber beside him and muttered softly. If I wasn't hatred, would you still be willing to follow me? Clang, clang. The hatred fiend saber seemed to be able to understand Yin Beichen's words and trembled. It had already acknowledged Yin Beichen as its master. Regardless of whether Yin Beichen was hatred or Shura, it would follow him through life and death. All right. The light in Yin Beichen's eyes intensified as he said proudly, I, Shura, will bring you to the upper world in this lifetime to take a look. I, Shura, will also defy the heavens and change my fate, altering life and death. With that said, Yin Beichen bowed deeply to the old storyteller. Thank you, senior. The old storyteller nodded slightly with a delighted expression. Indeed, he thought highly of Yin Beichen. In his heart, Yin Beichen's achievements might be even higher than the fiend emperor hatred back then. Yin Beichen turned to look at Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, Zimo, I won't accompany you on your trip to Kunlun ruins. You have to be careful. Don't worry, brother. Su Zimo nodded. Yin Beichen had his own Tao. If he followed Su Zimo to Kunlun ruins, he might be restrained instead. Now that he saw that Yin Beichen was fine, Su Zimo was completely relieved. There was no need for him to stay in Enigma Palace anymore. Zimo, the moment Demoness Ji spoke, Su Zimo understood her intentions. Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. There's no need for that. You're the pure maiden of this lifetime. How can you follow me to Kunlun ruins casually? If the pure maiden sect finds out about this, I'm afraid I'll be hunted down by their experts. Extreme Fire nodded as well. Don't worry. With me and Nianqi accompanying Zimo, we'll be able to take care of each other. Master Nianqi, you don't have to follow me. Su Zimo said in a deep voice. The Kunlun ruins is not a good place. There's no need for you to take the risk with me. What are you talking about? Extreme Fire's eyes widened as he patted his storage bag and said, Don't flatter yourself. I have a treasure map here. I went to the Kunlun ruins for this treasure map. Young master, I'm already here. You can't chase me away. Nianqi pursed his lips and smiled. Su Zimo didn't say anything else. The three of them looked at each other and smiled. All of their feelings were expressed without words. Since he had decided to leave, Su Zimo did not delay any longer. He bid farewell to Shi Jian and the others and prepared to leave. The old storyteller said, You still have the Bloodvine race's kill order on you. If you leave Enigma Palace, you'll definitely be seen by the Bloodvine race. I'll tear through space and bring you guys over. As the old storyteller spoke, he extended his palm and swiped at the void before him. The void seemed to have been sliced open by a sharp blade as a gigantic rift appeared. It was dark and deep inside with a sinister wind. The old storyteller flicked his sleeves and swept up Su Zimo, Extreme Fire and Nianqi before leaping into the rift. Old man, bring me along. I'll go take a look too. Just as the rift was about to close, Lin Xuanji shouted and tugged at the old storyteller's sleeves, jumping in as well. The world spun. It felt as though they were using a major transference talisman. Their vision was dark without any light, and even breathing was difficult. In what felt like more than 10 breaths, Su Zimo and the others felt their bodies lighten, and their eyes lit up. They finally saw light again. Although they were on solid ground, everyone's hearts were heavy and extremely oppressive. Everyone looked over instinctively, and could not help but be stunned on the spot with shocked expressions. In front of everyone was a continuous mountain range. Some of the mountain ranges seemed to have suffered an intense collision, and were sliced into two. Some of the mountain ranges were mostly shattered. The desolate plains of the mountain range were filled with corpses and white bones in a shocking manner. Some of the corpses had yet to rot, and maintained their original form. Their bodies were long and more than 10,000 feet long, looking like coiled divine dragons. Those were dragon skeletons. A divine dragon that was more than 10,000 feet long meant that this was a true Ancestor Realm divine dragon. However, everyone saw the corpse of an Ancestor Realm divine dragon at the edge of Kunlun ruins. It was truly hard to imagine how tragic the primordial war was back then. Everyone looked around. Among the piles of bones, there were not only the corpses of dragons, but also those of other primordial races. There were also the corpses of many unknown living beings that filled the entire mountain range. Such a scene was way too shocking. The aura emitted by the ruins was way too oppressive and sinister. If one's Dao heart was unstable, it was extremely easy for one to have a mental breakdown in such an environment. Extreme Fire looked at the scene before him, and seemed to have thought of something as he sighed gently. Back then, more than 10 of us came to search for this treasure. To think that I was the only one who survived. One of the fellow Taoists' Dao heart collapsed not long after he entered Kunlun ruins. Pausing for a moment, Extreme Fire sighed again. Actually, if I hadn't met Zimo, I would have died a long time ago. Thinking back to what I've experienced all these years, it's truly a pity. The storyteller looked at the ruins and remained silent for a long time before saying slowly, Zimo, cultivate well in Kunlun ruins. You don't have to worry about Tianhuang mainland. I'll do my best to deal with the various primordial races, and try my best to buy time for you. Su Zimo nodded. He did not know if he would survive or die in Kunlun ruins, and his future was uncertain. Even he did not know if he could return alive, or when he could return to Tianhuang mainland. Senior, take care too. Su Zimo bowed deeply to the storyteller old man. Brother Su, I'll wait for your return. Even the frivolous Lin Xuanji felt a hint of reluctance as they were about to part. Su Zimo waved his hand and stepped into Kunlun ruins with Extreme Fire and Nian Qi. The three of them walked very slowly and scanned their surroundings with their spirit consciousnesses. They were tense, afraid that something would happen. The storyteller old man watched the three of them from outside Kunlun ruins the entire time. He only returned to his senses when the three of them disappeared. Old man, why have you suddenly become so sentimental? Lin Xuanji asked with a frown. He knew the storyteller old man too well. He could sense the pessimism in the storyteller old man's heart. Given Brother Su's talent, the Dragon Phoenix true body and Qinglian's true body, even the primordial races will not be a match for him if he grows up. Lin Xuanji was very optimistic. The storyteller old man shook his head slightly. I'm afraid there's not much time left. If we wait another 10,000 years, I believe that Araki Takashi will definitely be able to ascend to the peak and become an existence comparable to the human emperor. However, the conflicts between the primordial races and the cultivation world are increasing, and the movements of the primordial races are increasing. The final battle is about to arrive. Lin Xuanji's heart skipped a beat as he asked, Old man, how long do you think we have? No more than 100 years. The storyteller old man's voice was heavy. 100 years. Lin Xuanji finally understood why the storyteller old man was so pessimistic. 100 years was too short. For cultivators, 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. It would be good enough if Su Zimo could advance by a minor cultivation realm, let alone the Mahayana realm. Taking a step back, even if Araki Takashi were to advance to the Mahayana realm, how could he fight against the experts and emperors of the primordial races? The storyteller old man murmured softly. Let's do our best and leave the rest to fate. Chapter 1478. Kunlun Ruins. Su Zimo and the other two advanced. The more they walked, the more shocked they became. The surrounding environment became increasingly sinister and terrifying with ghostly shadows. In just 10,000 years, the ruins of the great Qian Empire were filled with a rich malevolent qi. Coupled with the lingering ghosts, many vengeful spirits were nurtured. To the Kunlun ruins before them, the great Qian ruins was like a firefly compared to the moon or a drop of water compared to the ocean. The difference was like night and day. The malevolent qi here was so thick that Su Zimo and the other two felt uncomfortable. After all these years, it was not surprising for vengeful spirits to be nurtured in such a rich and majestic malevolent qi. Su Zimo and the other two had strong blood qi and dermic powers surged. Ordinary ghosts and malevolent spirits knew how powerful they were and did not dare to approach. However, as they gradually ventured deeper into the Kunlun ruins, a ghostly figure would flash before their eyes occasionally. The blood qi of the three of them was also a great supplement for them. All of a sudden, the malevolent qi ahead surged and condensed into a large black fog that floated towards the three of them, wanting to devour them. Humph! Extreme Fire harumphed coldly. How dare mere ghosts come out to harm others in broad daylight? Before he finished his sentence, Extreme Fire conjured a hand seal and tapped forward. A scarlet-red flame burst out and instantly submerged into the swirling black fog of baleful aura. The power of thunder and flames was rather effective against such evil things. Furthermore, Extreme Fire's flame was condensed from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, and most conjoint body mighty figures could not withstand it. However, when the flame entered the black fog, it merely paused for a moment without causing any ripples. The black fog continued to surge towards the three of them. Tisk tsk tsk. Suddenly, a bone-chilling laughter sounded from the black fog. How can there be daylight in this wasteland? Here, it's always dark without light. Swoosh. The moment he said that, suddenly, an incomparably gigantic skull appeared in the black fog. Its eye sockets surged with a bloodthirsty glint as it opened its mouth and devoured the three of them. You must have a death wish. Extreme Fire's hand seals changed once more and three balls of flames appeared, condensing the Samadhi Dao fire and striking over. The power of the Samadhi Dao fire was more than twice as powerful as the previous flames. The Samadhi Dao fire entered the skull's mouth and instantly ignited a raging fire. The black fog around the skull was burned into nothingness. Roar! The skull let out an extremely painful roar. However, no matter how it channeled its murderous aura, it could not extinguish the Samadhi Dao fire on its body. In just a few breaths of time, the skull of the skull was already crackling from the heat, and cracks appeared on it. If you dare to step into the Kunlun ruins, don't even think about leaving alive. The skull said fiercely. The fire here will definitely attract more vengeful spirits and evil spirits. Just wait to be devoured. Before he could finish his words, the skull suddenly exploded, scattering bones all over the ground, quickly turning into ashes. Extreme Fire sighed softly and said, When we first came here, more than half of us were killed by these vengeful souls and malicious ghosts. In the end, there were only 3 people left when we entered the treasure trove. After this incident, the 3 of them became even more cautious as they continued forward. Before long, Nian Qi's gaze shifted and landed on a black fruit. His eyes lit up. The fruit was the size of a baby's fist. It was black on the outside, but it shone brightly inside like an exquisite grape. It's a fiend spirit fruit, Extreme Fire exclaimed softly. When he saw Su Zimo's confused expression, Extreme Fire explained, This fiend spirit fruit is extremely rare. It can only be nurtured in the place with the densest malevolent aura, after countless years. To most cultivators, the fiend spirit fruit is a poisonous fruit. They'll definitely die if they consume it. However, if one enters the Mahayana realm and experiences the earth malevolent fire of the 3 calamities of divine power tribulations, consuming the fiend spirit fruit will have a miraculous effect. the success rate of tribulation transcendence will increase by at least 30%. Such a spirit fruit definitely did not exist in Tianhuang mainland. That was because the conditions to nurture the fiend spirit fruit were way too harsh. Even an environment like the Great Qian ruins could not nurture it. It was only possible in the Kunlun ruins. As the old storyteller had said, danger and opportunity coexisted in the Kunlun ruins. Su Zimo did not say anything, and merely frowned slightly, looking at the bottom of the fiend spirit fruit in deep thought. Nianqi had already walked forward, and was prepared to pluck the fiend spirit fruit. Don't move. Watch out. Right then, two voices sounded almost at the same time. The first warning came from Su Zimo. The second voice was an unfamiliar one. Right then something strange happened. The ground beneath Nianqi's feet suddenly split open, and an incomparably sharp cold light flashed, slashing towards Nianqi's figure. When Nianqi heard Su Zimo's warning, he was already prepared, and leaped up to look down. Rumble! Boom! A gigantic scarlet-backed centipede crawled out of the crack on the ground. It was dozens of feet long and chased after Nianqi, who was in midair to bite him. The scarlet-backed centipede's cultivation was already at the perfected conjoint body realm. If it was in the 8 demon regions, it would be a ferocious beast with terrifying combat strength. Although Nianqi had just advanced to the conjoint body realm, half of his body was divine blood. He hollered and channeled his bloodline and dermic powers. A bedazzling gigantic sword appeared in his palm that shone brightly. Slash! Nianqi gripped the sword with both hands, and slashed down at the scarlet-backed centipede beneath. Clang! The gigantic sword stood on the scarlet-backed centipede, and failed to slash in. Instead, it created a series of sparks. The scarlet-backed centipede loved to eat corrosion. After cultivating for countless years in this ruin, its shell was already invulnerable. Humph! Nianqi did not panic either. He dispersed the gigantic sword, and conjured his bloodline phenomenon. An ancient and imposing pyramid appeared in midair, and countless living beings prostrated beneath it. Boom! The pyramid suppressed the scarlet-backed centipede viciously. The scarlet-backed centipede cried tragically. Although its body was not afraid of sharpness, the pyramid carried an extremely terrifying might that weighed thousands of kilograms. When it crushed down, its body was smashed into two. Black blood splattered everywhere. The black blood in the scarlet-backed centipede's body contained lethal poison that could kill a conjoint body mighty figure with ease. The scarlet-backed centipede opened its mouth and spat out a pitch-black poisonous fog. Thereafter, it swayed its upper body and wanted to burrow back into the crevice to escape. Nianqi possessed the bloodline of a Protoss, and the poisonous fog and blood could not get close to him at all. Shh! Nianqi descended and charged down instantly. He grabbed the scarlet-backed centipede's leg barehanded, and yanked it out of the crevice. Among the primordial 9 races, the body and bloodline of a Protoss were at the top, and were on par with dragons. Although the scarlet-backed centipede's body was massive, it could not compare to Nianqi in terms of strength. After Nianqi yanked the scarlet-backed centipede out, he slammed it onto the ground viciously. The pyramid descended once more and crushed the scarlet-backed centipede into a bloody paste. That counterattack was extremely sharp, and displayed Nianqi's extremely powerful methods and combat talent. Even Su Zimo nodded his head secretly when he saw that. Chapter 1479. Apart from countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits, there were also some terrifying living beings in the Kunlun ruins. After killing the scarlet-backed centipede, Nianqi descended and looked in another direction. A white-robed man stood there. He was at the conjoint body realm, and was handsome with eyes like stars. Standing not far away, his clothes fluttered, and he looked extremely elegant. At that time, she wanted to pluck the fiend spirit fruit, and was reminded by 2 voices. One of them was Su Zimo, and the other was the white-robed man. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Nianqi cupped his fists and thanked the person. Don't mention it. The white-robed man smiled gently. Forgive me for being presumptuous, but from the looks of it, the 3 of you must have just arrived at the Kunlun ruins, right? That's right. Nianqi nodded. There was no need to hide this matter. Su Zimo and Extreme Fire did not say anything. Their gazes landed on the white-robed man as they sized him up. The white-robed man said, "Danger is everywhere in this ruin. For a treasure like the fiend's spirit fruit, there must be powerful ferocious beasts guarding it nearby. There are also some ferocious beasts that specially guard the vicinity of some heaven and earth treasures, waiting for other living beings to enter the trap." At that point, the white-robed man's eyes dimmed and his tone turned low. "Initially, there were 7 of us on this trip, but we fell into the trap of a powerful ferocious beast. I was the only one who escaped death's eye." When he heard that, Extreme Fire was reminded of the past and sympathized with the white-robed man. However, Extreme Fire was still cautious and probed. "Are you here for this fiend's spirit fruit as well?" "I'm here for the fiend's spirit fruit." The white-robed man smiled and looked at Nian Qi, saying honestly, "However, this fiend's spirit fruit clearly belongs to this fellow Taoist." Extreme Fire nodded slightly. Of course, in the cultivation world, one's heart was unpredictable. It was only the first time they met, and no one could guarantee what the other party was thinking. "Fellow Taoists, I've been in the Kunlun ruins for a period of time. I wonder if I can travel with the 3 of you." The white-robed man's eyes were filled with anticipation. Extreme Fire was a little hesitant. Under normal circumstances, the 3 of them were familiar with each other and were more resistant toward strangers. However, this was the Kunlun ruins. When Extreme Fire heard about this person's encounter, he could not help but think of himself back then. If this person was allowed to wander alone in the Kunlun ruins, this person would most likely be doomed. "Why don't we bring him along?" Extreme Fire secretly sent a voice transmission. "Given the 3 of us, if this person really has any ill intentions, we can easily deal with him." Nianqi did not object, and merely looked at Su Zimo. In her heart, Su Zimo was in charge of everything. Ever since the white-robed man appeared, Su Zimo had not spoken. At Extreme Fire, ice ice. "I am Ling Hen, the white-robed man's." Su Zimo nodded. "I'm Desolate Marshal, Taoist. Calm." The white-robed man cupped his fists towards Su Zimo. Although their conversation was simple, Extreme Fire and Nian Qi's expressions changed slightly. Both of them could tell that something was wrong. The white-robed man was way too calm when he heard the name, Araki Takeshi. Su Zimo's gaze was faint as he asked with a fake smile, "Seems like you haven't heard of me, fellow Taoist?" The white-robed man smiled apologetically. "I'm an itinerant cultivator, who has been cultivating in seclusion all year round. I don't know much about the cultivation world, and am ignorant. I've embarrassed myself in front of you, fellow Taoist." That explanation barely made sense. However, Extreme Fire and Nian Qi were already wary. Araki Takeshi established the Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings, shocking the world. Even itinerant cultivators who were in seclusion all year round and isolated from the world would have heard of Araki Takeshi. Su Zimo smiled as well and asked, "How long more are you going to pretend for?" The smile on the white-robed man's face did not diminish, and his expression turned strange. A sinister aura emanated from his body, as well as he clapped and smiled. "Truly impressive. In all these years, there have been many cultivators who have entered Kunlun ruins. You're the first to see through my disguise." Extreme Fire and Nian Qi felt their scalps tingle. Even though Su Zimo had exposed them, the 2 of them still could not tell what the white-robed man was. If this person were to travel with them, the consequences would be unimaginable. Actually, even Su Zimo could not see through this person's true identity. However, after the white-robed man appeared, Su Zimo's spirit perception was constantly warning him. That was why he probed. "Let's see what you are." Su Zimo did not waste his breath on the white-robed man, and flicked his finger. Qi. A white sword qi burst forth in a dazzling manner. In the blink of an eye, it had already descended before the white-robed man. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword qi caused the white-robed man's expression to change slightly. Swash! The white-robed man's figure swayed and disappeared before Su Zimo and the other 2. He moved to the other side at a shocking speed. Even Extreme Fire's gaze could not catch up. The white-robed man's figure appeared once more. There was an additional wound on his cheek that flowed with blood, and emitted a nauseating stench. Even though the white-robed man dodged extremely quickly, his face was still sliced by the heaven-slaying sword qi. So Baigu has obtained the Tao and even evolved flesh. Su Zimo sneered and strode forward. He clasped 2 fingers and slashed at the white-robed man. Qi! 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 More than 10 heaven-slaying sword qi burst forth and split into different directions, charging towards the white-robed man. Ah! Sensing danger, the white-robed man suddenly shrieked. The flesh and blood on his body suddenly dissipated, turning into thick malevolent qi that condensed into malevolent spears that collided with the heaven-slaying sword qi. The white-robed man was only left with a skeleton standing on the spot. The skeleton was clearly a little strange, as though it was pieced together from all sorts of bones. There were dragon bones, golden crow bones, and Protoss bones. First, the skeleton was pieced together from the corpses in the Kunlun ruins. After obtaining the Tao, it used the malevolent qi to condense flesh and blood. If the skeleton were to continue cultivating, it would be no different from a true cultivator. Clang! 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 The malevolent spears released by Baigu collided with the heaven-slaying sword qi, and were not disadvantaged, letting out an ear-piercing sound of collision. The cultivation of Baigu was already at the half-martial ancestor realm. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he strode forward and conjured hand seals with both hands while chanting Sanskrit. Om Mani Padme Hum. At the same time that the Great Bright mantra was released, 6 Great Bright Dharmic seals descended at the same time. Dharmic arts of the Buddhist monasteries dealt the greatest damage to Baigu. When the Great Vajra Wheel seal and Great Mount Meru seal descended, Baigu shuddered and his bones shook as though they were about to fall apart. Su Zimo sat down and pressed his palms together. He lowered his head like an eminent monk who had attained the Tao with a dignified expression as he chanted a series of incantations. Great Bright Mantra, Hearsay Mantra, Great Enlightenment Mantra, 6 Paths Vajra Incantation. All of those incantations were used to free the souls of the dead and appease their resentment. A ghost struggled continuously between the glabella of the skeleton. However, under the continuous incantations, it gradually could not hold on and was extinguished. Swoosh! White bones scattered all over the ground, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.